Chapter 51. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The two walked shoulder to shoulder into the long corridor. It was still extremely dark and quiet, but the effect was completely different from the deathly stillness of the laboratory. Even though it was dark, they could see rippling water waves within the murkiness as they walked along the long corridor. A tiny amount of sunlight was refracted within the water. It was extraordinarily vivid. There were also faint sounds transmitted from the glass walls on all four sides. The underwater life forms were affected by the light. They came one after another, scraping against the glass walls. The quieter it was, the louder it was. There was one time when Xie Junping couldn't hold back his curiosity. He shot a beam of light into the water and illuminated an alligator. Xie Junping saw the malevolent head crash against the glass wall with a rumble. He instinctively dodged, but he collided fiercely against the other side of the wall. The collision caused tears to flow out. He became much more well-behaved from then on. No matter what, he had to walk along the center of the long underwater corridor. He even took the initiative to lower the brightness of the lighting. In the end, he arrived at the end of the long corridor without any danger. There was clearly a bend here. Xie Junping walked to the corner, trembling with fear and trepidation. He used his wristband to illuminate it, and what entered his eyes was a thick and heavy alloy door. He looked at the series of steel bolts that came down from above, and his entire body felt unwell. Xie Junping threw himself over and fiddled with it for a long time. In the end, he fiercely kicked the door 3 times, but only muffled thuds rang out. It was clear that the place had already been filled with water, soil, and sand. He thought of the most important matter and lowered his head to look at the signal. It seems like there's a bit. There's only a meter or 2 between here and the ground. The problem was that the water and soil layers were mixed together. It possessed an extremely powerful electromagnetic shielding effect. Xie Junping's wristband could be considered quite powerful, but it was still very hard for him to receive a clear signal. Xie Junping tossed and turned until his forehead was beaded with sweat. Luo Nan shifted his gaze to other locations in the long underwater corridor. He followed the electronic map on his retina and felt his way along the seemingly seamless inner wall. His actions were far too obvious. Xie Junping, who had suffered setbacks time and time again, was attracted over. He copied Luo Nan and lightly knocked on the inner wall, but he couldn't hear anything at all. There weren't any hidden doors along the way. There's no need to break here. Those architectural designs are quite arrogant. Xie Junping's words were very insightful. In fact, the path on the electronic map that Luo Nan obtained ended at the sealed alloy door. There were no other directions. Luo Nan also tried to remotely control this door, but this was clearly a clumsy and purely physical isolation. It was completely immune to all advanced electronic remote control technology. But he did not give up. Because there was one thing that couldn't be explained no matter what. Why didn't the other system modules in the laboratory have any reaction on the external neurons interface? Only the functions of gear and the observation deck were clearly displayed. According to various information, the route of the observation deck was set up before Yan Hong established his laboratory. Was it a natural fit, or was it a deliberate modification later? If the subsequent modifications were so ingeniously different from Yan Hong's laboratory design, was there some kind of targeting? Along the way, they had been in the most ordinary public places. It seemed that only at the end of this corridor would there be some hidden spaces. If there really was a problem, it would be here. Luo Nan pondered for a moment before decisively ending his infiltration of the laboratory system modules. He withdrew the heavily chained crow. It was worth mentioning that the external neuron had a higher priority with his mental connection. Once the heavily chained crow retracted, the external neuron transformed back into a long line of electricity and returned to his brain. Love goes small say Netku, what an inconceivable object, Luo Nan shook his head. He didn't want to waste too much time on this for the time being. Instead, he operated the heavily chained crow and drove the wraith sign to sweep and slice this area vertically and horizontally. All of these physical barriers were completely meaningless to the heavily chained crow and the wraith sign. Got it. Luo Nan suddenly raised his head to look at the alloy steel plate above him. 95% of the material that formed this underwater corridor was tempered glass. Only the two ends were fixed with metal. Normally, no one would pay attention to this. But when the heavily chained crow swept past, the material at a certain location above was clearly completely different from the alloy steel plate and tempered glass. Hey, where are you looking at? Xie Junping noticed Luo Nan's abnormality. He raised his head to look, but he didn't discover anything. Luo Nan ignored him. He just earnestly estimated the height and angle. He should still be able to reach it, excuse me. Luo Nan swung Xie Junping aside and retreated 2 steps back. He ran with a boost and stomped heavily on the metal door. He borrowed the force to soar up a bit, and at the same time, he half-twisted his body and extended his hands upwards. The place where the alloy steel plate should have been had inexplicably transformed into something like mucus. It was just a bit of obstruction before it was broken through. And then Luo Nan's hands made contact with the edge of the actual steel plate. The collision was a bit painful, but his reaction was quite fast. He grabbed it and twisted his body a bit. He exerted strength from his waist and did a pull-up, and his body shot upwards. From Xie Junping's perspective, half of Luo Nan's body was submerged within the steel plate. Then Luo Nan's 2 legs swayed, and he disappeared without a trace. F***ck me. Mimicry film. Xie Junping's family had some business with the military. He was able to call out the name of this cutting-edge product in a single breath. This was truly a glimmer of hope at the darkest hour. It was worth celebrating. But here came the problem. It seems that I can't do this sort of high-difficulty leap and climb. Even with Luo Nan's help, Xie Junping still wasted at least 10 minutes in order to barely pass this checkpoint that tested his control. And when he truly made contact with the space above, he couldn't help but curse, "Oh my God." So the secret passage was waiting here. Indeed, this was a narrow passageway that didn't even reach a meter in height and width. One needed to bend their knees and crawl in order to pass through. It was completely different from the entire route they had taken before. What happened to the designer's pride? This place should have been opened later. It's different in front. Luo Nan had already done some scouting while Xie Junping was wasting time. He led people to crawl over right now, and soon they displayed a completely different style. When the horizontal narrow passageway ended, the structure suddenly flipped upside down. It became a vertical space. Though it wasn't very spacious, it was more than enough to accommodate 2 people at the same time. Most importantly, it was much more comfortable. Under the illumination of the light, a wooden stone staircase spiraled upwards. Though there was light shining down, they still couldn't see the end. They touched it. It was very moist, but it was very clean. The 2 climbed up the staircase. Xie Junping touched the inner wall with curiosity. It looks like tree bark. Hey, look at this position. Don't tell me we're inside a withered tree in the sandbar. Maybe. Luo Nan responded, the tree body should be filled with some sort of bionic material. It looks like it's close to decay, but it's actually extremely tough. Wow! This is a treehouse. The symbolic plant of the withered tree sandbar is a treehouse. Just what year and what month is this extravagant work? Holy crap! What the hell is this? Suddenly a black shadow rushed past Xie Junping's eyes, leaping straight into the base of the tree. The shadow itself wasn't that big, but its speed was quite fast. It was unknown which path it took, but there was a faint sound of water. Then there was no more sound. Chapter 52. Genius in 1 second. Remember Love Go. Speak Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Xie Junping was frightened by the shadow and nearly fell down. He cut an extremely sorry figure, but he couldn't help but curse. Love Go small. Speak Net. Luo Nan could see quite clearly due to the senses of the heavily chained crow. It's an animal from the swamp. It seems to be a muskrat. Are there any other entrances and exits besides the path we took to enter? Muskrats were a relatively common animal in the wetlands of Acumen College. Adult muskrats were 30 to 40 centimeters long, and their tails were 20 to 30 centimeters long. The one that just flashed past was much smaller. It seemed to be underage, but its movements were quite nimble. Xie Junping grimaced in pain. This place hasn't been idle for a year or two. I'm afraid it's long since become a bird's nest or something. Be careful not to step on bird shit. He spat out the last word halfway before he forcefully swallowed it back down. The illumination beam just so happened to cut into a spacious area. One could see that the ring-shaped chair made the most use of the space. There were 2 stools placed casually. There were wall lamps embedded in the walls of the tree hole. There were also a few exquisite wall-hanging bookshelves and decorations. One could tell with a glance that this was a resting room. How big could a tree hole be? The usable area before their eyes definitely didn't exceed 3 square meters. It really couldn't even fit a bed. But the exquisite layout made the most use of the characteristics of the ring-shaped space in the tree hole. It gave off a rather relaxed and leisurely feeling. Xie Junping immediately forgot his previous words and clicked his tongue. You know how to enjoy yourself. Amazing. There's another floor above. Luo Nan pointed at the stone steps that continued to extend upwards and continued to walk. Why do I feel like this project isn't the least bit inferior to Gear? Especially after so many years. They're actually able to keep this a secret. Their mouths are too tight. Xie Junping followed Luo Nan as he climbed up. He had the tendency of turning from a hater to a fan. The two arrived at the upper floor as they spoke, which was also the top floor of the small tree hole. The layout here was a bit simpler. It even looked a bit spacious at first glance. There was only a table embedded in the wall of the tree hole. In front of it was a low stool modified from an irregular protrusion of a withered tree. The table was very clean. There was only a round tray placed on it. Xie Junping recognized it as the base of an old projector photo album. The projector probably ran out of power and went out. But as long as it was charged, it should be a very direct clue. Luo Nan was paying attention to the various areas within the tree hole. He fumbled around and pulled out a lot of brackets, braces, and other strange things, most of which were set up around the table. From their positions, it was obvious that this was a workshop. As long as the corresponding equipment was installed, it could handle ordinary research work. It was enough for a designer. Xie Junping watched from the side with interest. He also squeezed over to see if he could pull out any more airs. Luo Nan didn't squeeze with him. He moved to the opposite side of the table, to the most spacious area. There weren't any wall installations here, but if one looked carefully, there was a circle of irregular and narrow vein patterns. It roughly circled an area of about a square meter. He reached out and touched it, exerting a bit of force from the left and right. The inner wall of the bark in this area was like an unfolded scroll, flipping open to both sides. The next moment, sunlight shone in. The change in the light made Xie Junping, who was on the other side, suddenly turn his head. In reality, he had been tossing and turning in the laboratory and the tree hollow cabin for more than half an hour. It was already around 6:30. Night had already descended in Xia City, and the sky outside was rather dusky. Within the gloomy wetland jungle, several hundred meters away, only a vague silhouette could be seen. It was impossible to see clearly with the naked eye. But Luo Nan didn't know why, but he had a very good feeling at this moment. Perhaps it was because he was on the observation platform. The information given by the designer of gear was already thoroughly clear. Xie Junping suddenly laughed out loud to the side. Signal. There's a signal. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to him. He continued to survey the distant gear through the observation window. The blurry scenery with the naked eye didn't count for much. His mind still contained the elevation and floor plan of the building, as well as the intuitive impression he had of a corner of the building. When all the elements converged together, Luo Nan suddenly felt that the distant building was like a civilization of the previous generation that had been washed away by time. Only a rusted outer shell was left behind in its confrontation with the mighty forces of nature, heavy and ancient. Traces of an unruly industrial order could be seen on every corner of the building. It was incompatible with the hazy natural environment, but a compromise was finally achieved within this boundless darkness. This sudden feeling made Luo Nan open his notebook in an instant. He used a fluorescent pen to draw lines, capturing the intuitive impression that assaulted his face. After Xie Junping cheered, he turned his head to see Luo Nan's actions. So this person really did have a drawing fetish. But he felt a bit relieved in the blink of an eye. A person who was obsessed with a certain hobby like this shouldn't be a cold-hearted fellow. Xie Junping walked back with light hands and feet. He stuck his head out to take a look and saw that the surface of the paper was filled with simple and crude lines. If he didn't know the subject of the depiction beforehand, he absolutely wouldn't have connected Luo Nan's sketch with the jungle and the building before his eyes. But when the direction of the sketch became clear, he unexpectedly felt that it was quite interesting. Especially the structure that seemed to distort within the waves of water. It seemed to manifest some sort of incorporeal power. All right, let's not call it Picasso. How about Van Gogh? Luo Nan's sketch was drawn with a quick hand. He quickly closed his notebook and sighed in satisfaction. Luo Nan already had an even stronger interest in this building. He couldn't help but ask, who's the designer of this place? Xie Junping shrugged, then you've stumped me. This building has at least 20 years of history. I was still a little baby when it was built. You weren't even born yet. However, everything is fine as long as there's a signal. The AI will certainly have the relevant basic information. Xie Junping's previous experience of crying out for help had clearly suffocated him badly. He gnashed his teeth as he connected to the internet and asked for temporary authorization from the student council. From this moment on, he held absolute power over this damned laboratory. Sooner or later, I'll stuff that old bastard Yan Hong in there. I'll let him have a good taste. It doesn't matter which gutter he hides in. Xie Junping finally restarted the various system modules he had experimented with during this time. He searched for relevant information and found the original design that had been stored in an electronic file, including the designer's signature. He used the powerful function of his wristband to create an AR effect, causing an image to appear out of thin air. Independent designer, Bo Qingwen. Wow, look at this signature. It seems to be a woman. The handwriting is very beautiful. Xie Junping turned his head to size up the furnishings in the treehouse. He didn't see any particularly obvious female style. But the exquisite and comfortable design of the resting room on the next floor seemed to be able to verify this. Xie Junping became a bit excited, but he didn't receive a response from Luo Nan. He turned his head to look, but he saw Luo Nan staring at the designer's name displayed on the holographic screen, as well as the handwritten signature. Luo Nan didn't move an inch. Luo Nan's breathing seemed to be completely frozen along with the surrounding air. Chapter 53. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Speak Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Nan. Junior Nan. Xie Junping called out in a probing manner, but he still didn't receive any response. Luo Nan stood in place in a daze. He finally moved after a dozen seconds. He looked around at the furnishings within the narrow space once more. It was just that the coordination between his head and body seemed to have been completely lost. He was as stiff as a rusty machine. It was as if he could exhaust his last bit of battery at any moment and die here eternally. But in the end, Luo Nan was still able to control his body. He held on to the inner wall of the tree hole and slowly walked down the stairs. His mind was in a trance, as if he was sleepwalking. Xie Junping wanted to follow, but he stopped after some thought. He continued to operate his wristband and rummaged through the Order Club's database. Sure enough, there was something new. Bo Qingwen, a doctoral student of the 72nd Institute of Architecture and Design, a senior member of the Order Club. The electronic photo from the early days was of a delicate and pretty woman. It was very fitting with the layout of the tree house. Perhaps it was because of the first impression, but Xie Junping felt that this woman's facial features were quite similar to Luo Nan's. He already had a 70 to 80% certainty in his heart. Right when he was pondering whether or not he should confirm it a step further, his wristband displayed a call. Xie Junping grinded his teeth when he saw the number. He opened his mouth and was about to start cursing when he thought of Luo Nan downstairs. He forcefully swallowed the curses back into his stomach. He carefully walked to the window and growled, "Hu-san, you motherfucker want to kill me. You're still talking. What kind of bullshit is that protective system? A new investor. Are you sure? Here to take a look." At this time, Xie Junping was a bit surprised, but he was able to control his emotions. He pondered for a moment and gave some instructions to the other side. In the end, he gave a solemn warning, "Remember, if something happens again, I'll smash your door." Xie Junping walked down softly and quietly after concluding this matter. He stuck his head out from the stairwell to look down. He didn't dare to turn on the lights. The tree hole was dusky. He only borrowed a bit of daylight to barely see Luo Nan standing in the center of the resting room. He could touch the four walls with a slight stretch of his hand. But for some reason, he maintained a rigid posture of touching but not touching. It was as if he wanted to embrace an incorporeal shadow in the darkness. In the end, Luo Nan's figure slowly fell down, gradually submerging into the darkness. Only his faintly trembling back could be seen, like the bottom of a flipped boat that could sink at any moment. Xie Junping didn't want to continue watching, so he quietly walked back and waited in front of the window. As time passed, the sky grew darker and darker. He couldn't help but scratch his head as he considered the information provided by Hu-san. The sound of footsteps rang out while she was in a dilemma. Luo Nan appeared at the top of the stairs. His face couldn't be seen clearly due to the dim lighting. Xie Junping was delighted. He was just about to open his mouth when he discovered that Luo Nan wasn't paying any attention to him at all. Luo Nan was still like a wandering spirit. He walked all the way to the open table and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he extended his arm over and picked up the base of the round plate on the table. He entered into a daze again. Fine. Let's wait a little longer. Even Xie Junping's breathing slowed down. He just hoped that Luo Nan would return to normal soon. "Senior, I'll have to trouble you with something." The sudden voice startled Xie Junping. Truthfully speaking, he really wasn't used to Luo Nan's gentle tone. Moreover, Luo Nan's voice was a bit hoarse and nasal. Could it be that he was crying? There was a subtle mismatch between the Luo Nan before his eyes and the Luo Nan in his memories. Xie Junping was a bit stupefied, but Luo Nan taking the initiative to communicate with him was a good thing. He went, twice and hurriedly responded, "Go ahead. Go ahead. Love go little say netku, I've already submitted an application to the Order Club. I'll have to trouble Senior to approve it." Okay. No problem. This was the reason why Xie Junping dragged Luo Nan over. Naturally, He had prepared this long ago. Right now, Junior, you're a new member of the Order Club. Including you, the club currently has a total of 13 members. Of course, you don't need to worry about the others. They'll be expelled from school at the very least. It's just a few procedural requirements for the club's operations. You'll need to put in a bit of effort for the next 2 days. I'll accompany you for a lap. Xie Junping's head was lowered as he spoke, but he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He raised his head and saw Luo Nan turn to face him, bowing over 90 degrees. Xie Junping was so shocked that he nearly fell out of the viewing window. He hurriedly helped Luo Nan up. Oh my! Junior Nan, what are you doing? Luo Nan looked straight at Xie Junping's face and spoke softly. Today, Senior took the initiative to introduce me to the club. Only then did I have the chance to know that my mother still had this work gear when she was alive. I was even able to see her former residence. Xie Junping was a bit embarrassed. This is a coincidence. It's not like this. My mother had already passed away when I was born. Before I could remember anything, my grandfather had gone mad and my father had left. My other family members didn't know much about my mother. Therefore, 16 years of time couldn't compare to today's understanding of my birth mother. No matter what Senior did in the past, Luo Nan, will never forget this favor. Luo Nan spoke in a genteel manner, but each word was solemn. Each word was true. Xie Junping really couldn't stand this proper and serious attitude. Plus, he felt that Luo Nan's current mental state was a bit abnormal. He pondered for a long time before finally asking cautiously, "It really is Auntie?" Luo Nan nodded slightly. He didn't know what method he used, but he charged the projector photo frame with electricity. Right now it could be turned on normally, displaying a picture of a woman in her daily life. It seemed that she was right under this withered tree. Back then, the water level of the wetlands had yet to submerge the sandbar. She was dressed in simple and casual attire. She leaned lightly against the withered tree, pointed at the camera, and had a bright and radiant smile. She was a bit more lively and vivid than in the file photo, and she possessed a unique sense of self-confidence and sharpness. Xie Junping didn't feel good in his heart when he thought about how such a talented and beautiful woman had died young. He didn't know what to say for a time. He could only console her dryly. Auntie passed away early. She didn't leave many things behind. Junior, you were able to find this inheritance. This is a great thing. You should be happy. It was only at this time that Xie Junping suddenly remembered. The Luo Nan before his eyes was only a 16-year-old youth. After stripping away his usual cold and hard outer shell, what was revealed was only a heart riddled with scars because of the death of his father and mother and the shattering of his family. Alright, this was too sour. But Xie Junping really found it hard to get used to this, especially when he saw Luo Nan's situation. He hated that he couldn't stay here tonight. This wouldn't do. Xie Junping gritted his teeth and tried to communicate with Luo Nan. Junior Nan, there's a problem right now. In the past, Gear was mainly occupied by the Construction Society and the Mystic Arts Research Society. But now a new financial backer has suddenly appeared. He's determined to get Gear. Today, he's coming over to investigate the scene. I've joined the society. Can they kick me out? They won't go that far, then it's fine. It was very clear that the current Luo Nan's entire mind was immersed in the emotions of remembering his mother. He didn't care about any other news, including the Mystic Arts Research Society. Xie Junping suddenly felt very tired. Weren't you the one who came up with the ideas before? Inexplicably, it was now his turn to rack his brains with all his might. He checked and filled in the gaps, including reminding Luo Nan to pay attention. The problem is that there's only one way to get out of here. We can't let those people block us here. Chapter 54. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuonet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan was stupefied when he heard this. He finally understood the most crucial problem. He looked around the treehouse and was silent for a few seconds before he finally made a decision. Let's go back first. Looking at the projection album in his hand, he hesitated for a long time before putting it back in place to avoid destroying the original layout of the treehouse. He then closed the bionic bark on the viewing window to make sure that no one would discover it. Luo Nan's gaze turned to Xie Junping after he finished doing all this. Xie Junping immediately raised his hand and swore, "I will absolutely not mention the treehouse to outsiders. This matter will rot in my stomach." Luo Nan didn't say a word. He just bowed once more. Ever since Luo Nan had solemnly expressed his thanks last time, Luo Nan had displayed an even more respectful attitude towards Xie Junping. Frankly speaking, this made Xie Junping quite happy in his heart. Luo Nan was the first to walk down with Xie Junping following behind. Perhaps it was because he was in a refreshed mood, but an inexplicable idea popped up in Xie Junping's mind. He borrowed his courage to poke Luo Nan's shoulder. "Brother Nan, if you don't mind, can I leave a camera?" "Ha!" Luo Nan suddenly turned around and stared at his face. A person's mentality was strange. In the past, Xie Junping would definitely be nervous at times like this, and he might not even be able to speak a complete sentence. But after feeling Luo Nan's respect, his courage rose correspondingly. His train of thought became clearer under Luo Nan's gaze. "I mean, Brother Nan, don't you think this house is a bit too clean? There were many mosquitoes in the wetland, and it was very humid. If it was not cleaned up for a few days, it would be impossible to see. But look at this place. It's clean and refreshing. Of course, it's beautiful, but I'm afraid." Luo Nan's eyes didn't blink at all. He spoke with a hoarse voice, expressing Xie Junping's unspoken meaning. "Someone has already discovered this place, and they've been living here for a long time. Ahem, I'm just saying. Love goes small say Netku after all. There's an 80% chance that Gear's AI cleaning system won't be able to reach here." Luo Nan didn't speak again, but his gaze drifted a bit. It was unknown what he was thinking. After a few seconds, he turned around and slowly walked down. His fingers were stuck to the inner wall of the tree hole until he reached the beginning of the stone steps. "It's here. There used to be a door here, but now it's been filled with bionic materials and sealed." Xie Junping shone the light on the surface and observed it for a while before agreeing, maybe this is a normal door left behind when the sand continent was still around. Then the water level rose and it was destroyed. "The water level is rising," Luo Nan's voice grew hoarser and hoarser. It was as if a blade was stuck in his throat. It became more and more difficult for him to speak. "When did the water level rise?" Xie Junping went online to search for information. Around 1987. At that time, the underground rock strata had ruptured, and an underground river had changed its course, causing the average water level of the wetland to rise by nearly half a meter. The lake area where the withered tree sandbar was located had risen by a full 7 meters. 87 years. It seemed that senior sister Bo Qingwen had died due to a difficult childbirth, which happened 80 years ago. In any case, it was impossible for her to remodel the tree hole 7 years later. Once his thoughts were sorted out, Xie Junping hissed. "There really is someone. Yes, there really is someone. Who is it?" Luo Nan responded with a hoarse voice. He slowly bent down and touched the narrow secret passage that was clearly excavated later. Xie Junping came to a realization. There was also this passageway. There was a 99% chance that it was excavated at the same time as the ceiling of the door. It was also done to avoid the rising water level and make it easier to enter and exit. This explained the difference from Bo Qingwen's original design. Xie Junping saw Luo Nan bend over, seeming to be pondering over the structure of the secret passage. He shone a light beam to make it easier for Luo Nan to investigate. But when the light beam shone over, Luo Nan realized something was wrong. Right now, Luo Nan was indeed pondering, but his fingers were unconsciously digging at the junction between the tree hole and the secret passage. This monotonous movement was not so much a result of inertia, but rather a representation of extreme emotions. Before, Luo Nan was heavy and sad, but he was relatively calm. His occasional ups and downs were like the night tide of the seaside. It was the rhythm of normal emotions. But right now, he was suppressed and irritable. He was like a wounded beast that saw the enemy that injured him intrude into his territory. He was filled with irritation and even savage emotions. Xie Junping was really worried that Luo Nan would dig out his fingernails. He gingerly shook the light beam. The change in light startled Luo Nan and he suddenly turned his head. Xie Junping shockingly saw that Luo Nan's eyes were blood red right now. The blood red wasn't from soaking in tears, but from the accumulation of berserk emotions. It was as if he wanted to devour someone. Xie Junping felt his calf cramp when he saw this. He unconsciously took a step back. However, Luo Nan's emotions seemed to have calmed down a bit under the illumination of the light. He stopped his monotonous, hair-raising movements and spoke in a low voice, "Senior, where were we just now?" There's someone living in the tree hole." Chapter 55. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuon.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Jumping down from the secret passage, Xie Junping looked up. The camouflage film blocked his line of sight perfectly, making him look like a piece of alloy steel. Who would have thought that there was a short and narrow secret passage that led to this strange tree hole space? Luo Nan didn't say a word. He silently made his way back. Xie Junping glanced at the surveillance screen once more. He hurried 2 steps to walk shoulder to shoulder with Luo Nan. But soon, he regretted his decision. At this time, all the system modules in the laboratory had returned to normal. When they returned, it was no longer dark. Inside the glass wall, under the special black light, the dark purple light made this area of water look dreamy and illusory. But to Xie Junping, this long and tedious road was simply torture. The mental state of Luo Nan next to her was abnormal. Along the way, Luo Nan continued the oppressive and impatient state he had in the tree hole. He was constantly spinning in circles in his own thoughts. Sometimes, he would stop abruptly and turn his head to look at the long corridor behind him, as well as the increasingly gloomy waters beside him. He would be in a daze for a long time. Every time this happened, the blood-red color in his eyes would be bright and glistening, making it hard for others to look at him directly. There were even several times when Xie Junping could hear the sound of his teeth clenching. After walking and stopping for a few minutes, Xie Junping became even more certain. Luo Nan was about to go crazy. He didn't doubt in the slightest that if someone dared to say, "I'm the person who lives in the tree hole," right now, Luo Nan would immediately pounce over and tear that person's throat to shreds. Then he would roar and interrogate, "What the hell are you doing over there?" What was he thinking? If this continued, Xie Junping felt that he would go crazy. Something had to be done. Xie Junping racked his brains to recall some of the communication classes he had attended. He tried to think of a way to express himself. After hesitating for a while, he finally said, "Junior brother, do you know very little about Auntie?" Luo Nan was clearly stupefied. His circle of self had been broken, and this power came from the nostalgia he had for his mother. This wondrous emotion was like a surging river that washed over his heart. It was slightly painful, but it wasn't bad. A long time passed before Luo Nan nodded, "Yes, very few. There's a way." Xie Junping was overjoyed and continued, "Auntie doesn't have any relatives." Luo Nan continued to respond, "My mother was a war orphan. She grew up in an orphanage." Xie Junping almost choked, but after calculating the time, Bo Qingwen was indeed born before the Third World War. There were many such situations in that generation. No matter what, the conversation had finally begun. Is it in the local area? If you want to gather more information, Junior, I have some power in Xia City. Xie Junping took charge again, and the results were actually pretty good. Luo Nan bowed towards him. Thank you, Senior. Here it comes again. She felt that Luo Nan was like a person from the previous century. Or perhaps he acted completely according to the patterns of the books. Yep. Perhaps this was the case. It was just that his cold face matched well with his actions, giving people the illusion that he was relatively mature. Thinking of this, Xie Junping was even more confident about this exchange. He waved his hand and said, "Actually, I really admire Auntie. To be able to single-handedly design gear, and even after more than 20 years, people are still fighting over it. I even thought it was the masterpiece of some great master. This is also the first time I've heard of it." Then, Brother Nan, what did you know before? Didn't your family mention anything about Auntie? The sudden silence nearly made Xie Junping think that he had outsmarted himself. But in the end, Luo Nan still opened his mouth. "Mom passed away before I was born, you said it before." Hold on. Why did these words sound a bit strange? Before Xie Junping could think it through, he heard Luo Nan speak. "Mom and him met at Acumen College. They went together to the wilderness and met up with my grandfather. At the time, my aunt had a terrible relationship with them. She knew very little." Luo Nan's words were a bit incoherent, and there were some subtle references. Xie Junping was able to understand after combining the information he had gathered before. Luo Nan's parents probably met and fell in love while studying at Acumen College. They went together to the wilderness to assist Luo Nan's grandfather in his research. And at the time, Luo Nan's current guardian, his aunt, didn't have a good relationship with his family. She didn't know much about the relevant circumstances. It was naturally hard for Luo Nan to obtain relevant information about his mother when his grandfather was insane and his father was missing. Luo Nan subconsciously reached out his hand as he spoke. His fingertips made contact with the glass wall, emitting a muffled sound of friction. "I only knew one thing about my mother since I was young. She passed away before I was born." It was these words again, and a strange feeling emerged once more. Xie Junping pondered back and forth twice before he finally realized what the problem was. How could she have given birth to a child when she was already dead? He had heard that in the past, when medical conditions were relatively backward, there were cases of misfortune and dystocia. The mother had already passed away, but the child was still preserved. Luo Nan was probably like this. Xie Junping believed that he had understood the crux of the matter. He was just about to continue the topic when he saw Luo Nan pull out a highlighter pen from his black notebook. He drew an oval-shaped cabinet on the glass wall. A slender silhouette of a person sat next to it. The lines of the drawing were simple to the extreme, but the content expressed was extremely straightforward and clear. "This is my mother." Luo Nan's voice was strangely gentle. "I've never seen her with my own eyes, but I've heard people say that this is how she gave birth to me." "Ha!" Xie Junping was a bit confused. "It said that it was June 80. I was 7 months old. I was in my mother's stomach. The base was in chaos, and my mother was heavily injured. She sealed off the laboratory and used the only health pod inside to save me. Look, I'm here." Luo Nan drew a small circle on the oval, which was the center of the health pod. Xie Junping opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Actually, he originally wanted to ask how a fetus was placed in the health pod inside the stomach. But when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he suddenly understood the tragic process. He was stupefied in place all of a sudden. Luo Nan lightly pressed the edge of the silhouette. His tone was still so gentle that it was frightening. I can't see her, but she's always been here. This is my mother. Xie Junping looked stupidly at the fluorescent lines. He didn't know how to respond for a time. Luo Nan walked forward and changed to a different area. He drew a few more lines, borrowing the illumination of the black light to form an oppressive shadow. At the front of the shadow was a prison-like structure. A person sat upright inside, and next to him was a small figure. 3 years later, my grandfather was sued, imprisoned, and went crazy. The laboratory was gone, the experimental materials were gone, and the research results were gone. At this time, a certain someone was gone as well. Luo Nan gave Xie Junping a strange smile. He should be here, but he's not. This is my father. They just happened to walk to the starting point of the underwater corridor at this time. Luo Nan put away the fluorescent pen and bowed towards Xie Junping once more. I just said some senseless words. I've troubled you, senior. Clearly, Luo Nan understood Xie Junping's thoughts. Conversely, Xie Junping was finally able to peek into a corner of Luo Nan's tortuous and gloomy inner world. Moreover, Luo Nan's emotions were clearly much calmer. This could be considered a contribution. Xie Junping let out a secret breath. Right when he was about to respond, the voices of people came from not too far away. 7 or 8 people crowded into the surrounding resting area of the underwater corridor. Some people even greeted Xie Junping, Brother Ping, we're here. Chapter 56. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. SpeakNet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Xie Junping frowned as he looked over. Hu Huaying of the student council was among the people who came. He was also Hu San'er. He could be considered Xie Junping's best friend and ally. He was the one who greeted Xie Junping. In addition, there were 2 unfamiliar faces. The other 4 people were the upper echelons of the construction society. Even the society's president, Lang Ding, had come. Xie Junping suddenly had an ominous premonition when he saw this situation. Xie Junping grumbled in his heart, but he still put on a smiling face and went forward to greet them. This kind of social work was his forte. Moreover, he didn't need to face Luo Nan for the time being. He immediately felt the world open up to him. He could do as he pleased, returning from the hellish difficulty to the novice setting. Even though there were 7 people in front of him, he was still able to greet them with familiarity without the slightest bit of confusion. He also inquired clearly about the identities of the 2 unfamiliar people. One was a lawyer with the surname Zhu. He was the financial backer's representative. His attitude was calm and indifferent. He had the aloof demeanor of a society elite. The other was a bodyguard. He had a dark skin and a swift and fierce body. He had a rather cool professional appearance. He ignored everyone. Both of them were people who had been working hard in society, and their ages were much older than the students present. It was reasonable to say that the school's society work office should send out a corresponding person to receive them in this kind of situation. Or perhaps a teacher consultant of the relevant society should come forward. But Xie Junping didn't see any of these. Xie Junping felt that something was wrong more and more. Soon, his premonition became reality. While he was exchanging pleasantries with lawyer Zhu, he directly said, "The Rainbow Fund is quite satisfied with the Construction Society's development plan and personnel composition. They are willing to carry out a more practical cooperation. Injecting capital to purchase a landmark building on the North Bank is also a pretty good investment. I hope to obtain the cooperation of the school and the student council in the relevant procedures and arrangements." Xie Junping laughed it off, but he had cursed Hu San'er 1,000 times in his heart. You can't even explain this kind of thing clearly. It's true that the new financial backer has arrived, but he's not directly entering the scene and starting from scratch. He's here to assist the construction society. Damn. I originally thought that the Twin Dragon Society was going to become the Three Kingdom Kill. But looking at the situation, it was clearly one-sided. He grinned. When he shook hands with Lang Ding, he said, I won't mention anything else, but I have to say that I'm impressed by the Construction Society's ability to attract sponsors. As the chairman of a large society, Lang Ding was not a particularly domineering person. At this moment, he only smiled. It's fine. Bringing in a new investor will make the society's capital structure more reasonable, and it will be easier to manage. Good luck. Xie Junping laughed and laughed, but in his heart, he screamed, trouble. He turned his head to glance at Luo Nan. This master still had a downcast appearance. He didn't care about the group of uninvited guests at all. Indeed, according to Luo Nan's logic, as long as he was in the Order Club, within the building that his mother had designed, it didn't matter who took control of this place in the end. My lord, how could it be that easy? Xie Junping cursed inwardly, feeling a headache coming on. Whether it was the Construction Society or the Mystic Arts Research Society, none of these large-scale societies were easy to deal with. If you didn't do your job well beforehand, a small club member would have plenty of ways to make you lose your job. The reason why Xie Junping dared to guarantee Luo Nan before was because he had already given the Mystic Arts Research Society a heads up. The road ahead and the road behind were completely paved. As for the Construction Society, it really wasn't easy to handle. Lang Ding was easy to talk to, but the structure of this society was quite complicated. There were many thorns in the executive committee. Let's not talk about other things. That damn dog Li Shuoqing was the vice president of the Construction Society. He possessed a lot of influence within the society. If Luo Nan really entered the Construction Society and bumped into Li Shuoqing, wouldn't a mysterious campus death case occur? He had to think of a plan when he got back. Xie Junping didn't have the mood to stay any longer when his thoughts reached this point. He spoke a few more words of nonsense and pulled Luo Nan to leave. But who knew that Lawyer Zhu of the Rainbow Fund would call him to a stop after just a few steps? Head Xie, there's something I need to consult you about. Xie Junping was the head of the Society Activities Department of the Student Council, but there were very few people who directly addressed him by his title on campus. He was stunned for a moment before turning his head and putting on a smiling face. Lawyer Zhu, please don't hesitate to ask. Lawyer Zhu nodded slightly. It's related to the assets of the society. From the looks of things, the Order Club has already entered a state of idleness. And it will take at least 3 months to half a year to complete the procedures. This is quite unfavorable for preserving the value of the existing assets. Therefore, we suggest that we contact the competing society and hold a coordination meeting. We will officially count and seal all of the assets of the Order Club to reduce depreciation losses and avoid additional consumption. We hope that the Student Council will be able to coordinate and organize in the middle to complete the relevant procedures as soon as possible. Xie Junping's brows furrowed. If you seal off the society, where will the master next to me go? Lawyer Zhu spoke without waiting for a response. In addition, we also hope that the school can conduct a strict examination of the procedures. We just paid attention to the Order Club Society website and discovered that a new member has actually entered the society. Can the society still recruit members during this period of lockdown? We need an explanation for the reason for joining the society during the auction of the society assets. F***CK. This guy was specifically looking for trouble. Xie Junping's face darkened in an instant. At the same time, he found it very strange. He didn't remember offending the Rainbow Fund or this litigator surnamed Zhu. Logically speaking, the Rainbow Fund was a very famous investment fund in Xia City. There was no need to be so stingy, right? He shot a glance at Luo Nan. Luo Nan had clearly heard Lawyer Zhu's words. He had already raised his head, but his gaze wasn't directed at the spokesperson. Instead, it fell onto the body of the dark-skinned bodyguard by Lawyer Zhu's side. Something was wrong. Although Xia Junping didn't understand what was going on, he definitely wouldn't budge an inch on this matter. He replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "Lawyer Zhu might not know, but according to the school's procedures, the Order Club hasn't been dissolved yet. It's only managed by the school's student council. Its main function is still to maintain the club's normal operations. Recruiting members is also within reason." Lawyer Zhu smiled. All of the original members of the society have entered the detention process. It's hard to believe that the society can still operate normally. Otherwise, the school wouldn't have launched an asset auction. Based on the escrow agreement, our understanding is that the so-called escrow should be in a situation where the society has substantially disappeared, so as to fully realize the preservation of assets. If Minister Xia thinks that our understanding is wrong, we can also convene a coordination meeting to consult the opinions of other bidders, and we can choose the greatest common divisor. Xia Junping was slightly stunned. He really didn't have the guts to hold that coordination meeting. Lawyer Zhu's gaze shifted to fall on Luo Nan's face. But then he quickly exchanged glances with the dark-skinned bodyguard by his side. The latter nodded slightly before speaking. "So this is the student Luo Nan who just joined the club. I just saw the announcement of your joining the club on the website. I'll take the liberty to ask. What's your reason for joining the club? Did you go through the relevant investigations? Did you have an understanding of the Order Club's circumstances before joining the club?" Luo Nan held his notebook in his arms when faced with this interrogation. He was cold and quiet, not uttering a single word. But Xia Junping couldn't bear to watch. He shouted, "Hey hey hey! That's 3 sentences already. If you want a reason, ask me. Who knows better than me?" Chapter 57. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Speak Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Xia Junping shifted the focus of the conflict back to himself, but in his opinion, perhaps he had saved Lawyer Zhu's life. When he thought of this, he felt a sense of superiority from a higher position. "Lawyer Zhu, if you say that the Order Club continues to operate and recruit new members is a loss of resources, then I won't admit it. Do we students eat pig's feed? Hu-san, the Order Club's qualifications to recruit new members have just been restored in the new semester, right?" Hu Huaying was a bit dizzy from the sudden intensification of the conflict. Xia Junping had already dragged him into the water, and their many years of alliance hadn't been in vain. He immediately nodded. It was restored on September 1st. Xia Junping was fully aware that this was a sign of a lag in the execution process, but he treated it as evidence and threw it at Lawyer Zhu's face. "Perhaps Lawyer Zhu doesn't understand the internal situation of the school, so I might as well inform you. In the past few years, the Order Club has been courting disaster. Aside from last year's financial problems, there was also an experimental accident in 1993, and their membership qualifications were revoked. But this qualification was officially restored on September 1st this year." What does this mean? It means that the school still hopes to give the Order Club a chance, to let this old club that has existed since the school's founding preserve a bit of its mark. Even if it can't escape the fate of merging in the end, it won't completely disappear. At least there's still a legacy. Xia Junping originally didn't believe these absurd words, but the more he spoke, the more excited he became. He was even a bit moved. Because at this moment, he suddenly thought of Bo Qingwen. He thought of this talented female senior who single-handedly designed gear. After leaving behind her iconic work, she left for the distant wilderness, and then perished in such a tragic and stirring manner. A club that once possessed such an outstanding person had to leave something behind, to let people remember something. He was doing exactly this. And so, Xia Junping's voice grew louder and louder. "A newcomer makes an application, and the club approves it. Isn't that normal? I see that this student's application is sincere, and his reason is sufficient. He himself is also very outstanding. What's wrong with allowing him to join the club during the escrow period? Lawyer Zhu had seen this type of expression where emotions were greater than reason many times. Young people always like to be like this. He smiled and shook his head. Reason sufficient. Can you tell me the specifics? If it was before, Xie Junping might have encountered awkwardness, but today was different. He laughed heartily. Of course it's sufficient, it's sufficient. He directly pulled out the blueprint from the society's database and showed it to everyone through the projection equipment nearby. Gear, which is also the building we are in, was designed by our school's Architectural Design Institute's 72 PhD student, Ms. Bo Qingwen. The final construction was completed. This is the relevant electronic file, including Ms. Bo's personal signature. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Lawyer Zhu. Lawyer Zhu felt that something was amiss. He withdrew his smile and frowned. Xie Junping's heart skipped a beat when the black-faced bodyguard beside him glared at him coldly. This guy didn't look like a bodyguard, but more like an armed gangster. However, under the push of unprecedented emotions, Xie Junping quickly roused his spirit and boldly said, "Just by relying on this one work, gear, Ms. Bo Qingwen is the pride of our school." Unfortunately, Lady Bu passed away 6 years after completing this work. Unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of her talent. After that, Gear's personnel changed, and no one remembered that stunning senior sister from back then. Until today. Xie Junping walked with large strides to Luo Nan's side. He draped his arm over Luo Nan's shoulder. Until today. Lady Bu's only son, student Luo Nan, has followed in his mother's footsteps and entered Acumen College to study. After a month of searching, he found his mother's work from back then. But he witnessed the decline of the Order Club and the lack of maintenance on gear. He was heartbroken and took the initiative to join the society, to contribute all of his strength, to let this legendary building radiate its splendor once more. Is this reason enough? Luo Nan shot a glance at the palm on his shoulder, but he didn't say anything in the end. The most difficult person to please didn't have any objections. Xie Junping's imposing manner rose with the tide. Junior Lang, Lawyer Zhu. Even though we know that the Order Club is likely to become history, Lady Bu's contributions to the school and student Luo Nan's contributions to his mother's honor should receive the school's support and encouragement. Even though this is my personal opinion, I'll say it here. If you have any objections, you can doubt it. Suing is no problem. Suing the student council, the alumni association, the parent conference, the president's office, and the board of directors is no exception. What's fake can't be real. What's real can't be fake. I really want to see who was able to sever the flesh and blood of Lady Bu and Junior Luo Nan. Who was able to destroy the mother-son affection between them? Who was able to trample the cultural inheritance of our school into the ground and ruin it? Xie Junping's imposing manner right now was truly earth-shattering. He glared and pointed at the irrelevant people. Junior Lang. Lang Ding smiled bitterly and waved his hand. He didn't want to clash with Xie Junping. Xie Junping looked at the most talkative person, Lawyer Zhu. Lawyer Zhu's face turned a bit green. He didn't respond immediately. It seemed that he was preparing his words. How could Xie Junping give him the chance? Right now his heart was carefree, indescribable with words. In the end, he just laughed out loud, put his arm around Luo Nan's shoulder, and swaggered off. This was an unprecedented victory. Xie Junping's eyes were practically brimming with hot tears before he had even walked a few steps. This was the first time he didn't look at the teleprompter. He didn't use his built-in earphones to give a passionate speech, okay? The effects were simply explosive. It was a pity. It was a pity that he wasn't able to record it. He wouldn't be able to recollect it in the future. Hold on. Perhaps there was a way. Xie Junping turned his head and asked, Junior Nan. My image this time. Give me a drawing. Sorry. Only now did Xie Junping discover that he had forgotten himself in his excitement just now. He was still holding Luo Nan's arm and hadn't let go yet. Xie Junping immediately shrunk his neck and hastily pulled his hand back when this old man's cold gaze swept over him. Who knew that Luo Nan would give him a thumbs up in the next moment? Senior, you're eloquent. Xie Junping coughed. He wanted to be a bit reserved. I've seen this bunch of litigators many times. It's Auntie and Junior Nan who gave me the confidence. In the end, he couldn't help but grin and laugh loudly. He couldn't control his mouth in the end. Speaking of which, Junior Nan. Just give me a drawing. It'd be a pity if you didn't keep it as a souvenir. Luo Nan actually didn't refuse. He just said, I'll go buy a flexible screen first. Xie Junping didn't expect Luo Nan to respond. He suddenly received this kind of response. He was stunned for a moment before becoming overjoyed. Actually, a portrait didn't count for much. But this represented that his friendship with Luo Nan had truly entered a new stage. He immediately slapped his chest. I'll buy this. No need. Thanks. Luo Nan laughed, but he quickly restrained himself. He lowered his head and flipped open the notebook. He went to the page of the flexible e-ink screen and looked at the cracked screen. A moment later, he opened the metal ring and removed the flexible e-ink screen. He weighed it in his hand and suddenly assumed a posture of wanting to throw it. Xie Junping was shocked to the side. He instinctively went to grab Luo Nan's arm. But who knew that Luo Nan himself would stop before he could exert his strength? He faced Xie Junping with a smile. Destroying hygiene isn't too good, right? Xie Junping fiercely nodded his head no matter what kind of craziness Luo Nan was having. He was fully aware of how Li Shueching had turned into a dead dog. So he could guess the importance of this flexible e-ink screen to Luo Nan. He couldn't help but worry that Luo Nan would make a choice that he would regret in the future due to his momentary emotions. If Luo Nan could figure it out by himself, then that would be for the best. Luo Nan muttered to himself for a moment. In the end, he placed the flexible e-ink screen back into the notebook and continued to walk forward. It was as if nothing had happened. Chapter 58. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuonet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Xie Junping's luxury car sped along the high-speed magnetic track. For a rich kid like him, a phantom being sealed was just an opportunity for the other collections in the garage to show themselves. Xia City had already entered the darkness of night outside the car window. It was rush hour, but the city was rarely congested. Over the past few decades, billions of tons of soil, steel, and other special materials had been used to build the magnificent metropolis according to the will of mankind. More than 200 million people were crammed into the limited land. But it could still operate efficiently. Just like transportation. From the ground to the sky, Xia City was divided into 20 layers of transportation. They were divided into hundreds of millions of different types of transportation. Even when the traffic was the most dense, it only took about 20 minutes to cover the 40 kilometers. Xie Junping volunteered to take Luo Nan home, so Luo Nan was happy and relaxed. He seized this time to familiarize himself with the newly purchased flexible e-ink screen, mainly the feel of the screen and the electronic pen. As for the other configurations, they were meaningless. When the external neuron seeped into it and connected to the battery module, the familiar interface that hadn't changed for 5 years appeared in front of him. However, the gear icon that still existed in the laboratory was nowhere to be seen, indicating that the special hardware and software foundation still had a certain impact on the external neuron. Luo Nan's finger stroked the original gear icon twice, then he opened the drawing software he hadn't used in a long time. At the top of the software interface was still the image of the burning wraith, and it still looked as malevolent and terrifying as before. But after experiencing the concise and abstract lines of the Wraith sign, Luo Nan felt that this sketch was truly unbearable to look at. There were many mistakes and awkwardness. Shaking his head, he directly deleted the magical sketch and replaced it with the one that depicted the entrance of the nightclub. Hey, hey, hey. Delete this one as well. Change it to something prettier. Xie Junping just so happened to turn his head at this time. He only saw Luo Nan delete a picture, but he was unable to see the content clearly. Love goes small say Neku however, he was very clear about what was going to happen next, so he immediately shouted. Luo Nan cast a glance at him and said in a lukewarm tone, "Pay attention to your driving. This is a high-speed magnetic track. How am I supposed to drive it?" Xie Junping put his hand on the steering wheel, but he received a warning from the car's AI, telling him to enter the conversion zone before adjusting the magnetic track to avoid a rear-end collision. Xie Junping had an innocent expression on his face. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to him. He created a blank page on the drawing software and immediately put pen to paper. Xie Junping drew close with a whoosh. He saw Luo Nan use the digital pen to draw out the blurry shadows of the background. It was vaguely the internal layout of gear. Xie Junping was excited when he suddenly became stupefied. Who is he? That dark-skinned bodyguard. Why did you draw him? I've seen it before. Luo Nan sketched out the outline of the dark-faced bodyguard. He wanted to add a few fine strokes, but he was a bit hesitant. For him, this was a rather rare situation. Xie Junping was still a little unconvinced. Who is he? I saw it on the ship Lanshan yesterday. It's probably Quantum Corporation's. Burner. Burner. Xie Junping's chin smashed into his own shoulder. It should be. Back on the warship, it was this dark-faced man who dragged Quantum Corporation's deep blue walker armor. He drove past Luo Nan's side. The two of them made eye contact, and the dark-faced man even sealed his outer armor with a membrane, as if he was guarding against a thief. The process could not be considered pleasant. Xie Junping was drenched in cold sweat. It seemed that he had clashed with the dark-faced man's gaze when he was passionately giving his speech. If the dark-faced man were to slap him, his recently upgraded mouth would probably shatter into pieces. In comparison, Quantum Corporation's deterrent power wasn't as direct. Luo Nan just shook his head at Xie Junping's performance. He flipped over the page and put his pen to paper once more. This time it really was Xie Junping's image. Even though it was clearly a gift, Luo Nan didn't deliberately add more ink. It was the same as before, a few strokes, and the image appeared clearly. This person had his arm around Xie Junping's shoulder while waving his arm. He seemed excited, angry, and a bit crazy. But the arm around Xie Junping's neck and the shadow on his flank made this somewhat out-of-control action turn into a somewhat upright and unyielding guardian. Xie Junping was still yelling, "How could I be this crazy?" But after seeing the overall composition, he became happier the more he looked. This continued until he was grinning from ear to ear. He was satisfied to the extreme. In the end, there was only one point of dissatisfaction. That's you on the side, right? Why didn't you draw it? I'm not good at self-portraits. Luo Nan responded simply and immediately sent this picture over. He didn't care what Xie Junping did with it. And then Luo Nan selected the two new sketches he had drawn as well as the ones he had accumulated before. He pressed on the screen for a few seconds and the second layer of the drawing software opened up. It was the true appearance. He had tried it yesterday in the confinement room of the warship and failed. Today he switched to a different machine and everything went smoothly. The main body of the second layer was the tetrahedron on the title page of his grandfather's notebook. It was just that it didn't have an inscribed sphere or an outer-scribed sphere. Instead, it was divided into 5 roughly equal layers. It rotated within the gray background. Xie Junping's gaze shifted over. He was a bit curious, Maslow. This interface really did look very close to the diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This theory arranged a person's needs from low to high, from basic to complex. It was like a staircase that was arranged into 5 layers. As long as one had a bit of common sense in sociology and psychology, they wouldn't be unfamiliar with this classical theory and related diagram from the last century. Xie Junping pointed and said, from bottom to top. Physiology, safety, social interaction, respect, and self-realization. Its students, employees, technicians, clergymen, and politicians. So vulgar. I'm saying that these occupations can be arranged in a staircase. Luo Nan didn't explain. Right now he had selected a dozen or so sketches, and they all moved into the enclosed space of the tetrahedron. There were at least several hundred similar artworks scattered within. Within the enclosed space, all the sketches were scaled down. They began to flip up and down as new sketches entered. It looked like a marvelous card set that was repeatedly shuffled and rearranged under the drive of the software. Several seconds later, the positions of the several hundred artworks within the card shuffling machine were determined. The vast majority of them were arranged in the bottom 2 layers. Occasionally there was a 3rd layer, but the 4th and 5th layers were all blank. I can play with them like tarot cards. A fortune teller. Which company made this software? Xie Junping was attracted by the marvelous changes in the interface. His mind was filled with questions. At the same time, he opened his eyes wide and strove to find his own image. It's my father's work. Xie Junping immediately became honest. He roughly understood Luo Nan's temperament now. He knew that Luo Nan wouldn't be in a good mood as long as it was related to his father. Luo Nan was much quieter for the rest of the journey. The flying car arrived at Blue Bay Community at approximately 7:15. This was a bit later than the usual time to get home. Luo Nan bid farewell to Xie Junping and walked into the community. Soon a scratching noise rang above his head. The familiar rhythm indicated that it was ink greeting him. Luo Nan didn't raise his head as he walked into the apartment building's elevator. He opened his notebook after choosing his floor and stared at the flexible e-ink screen. He stared blankly at the special interface of the 2nd floor. Then he sneered. That coward would forever shrink his head and tail even though he was declaring his existence. The drawing software was like this. The external neuron was like this. The tree hole space. Was it like this? Luo Nan didn't know, but the burning pain in his heart could not be clearer. The elevator reached the floor and the metal door opened. Luo Nan closed his notebook with a bang and walked out with large strides. The home AI sensed his existence and opened the front door after confirming it. Luo Nan stepped inside, but he was slightly startled. The lights in the living room were on. A middle-aged lady was sitting on the sofa, handling business through her wristband. She raised her head when she heard the door open. She looked straight at him with an expressionless face. Chapter 59. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuan.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan immediately stood at attention. Aunt, the middle-aged lady on the sofa was Luo Nan's aunt, Luo Shuqing. She was small and thin, with a plain face and a quiet and serious temperament. Luo Nan hung his head as usual in front of this elder. Auntie, you came from so far away. There's someone who just won't budge no matter how much I ask. So, I came over to pay my respects. Mrs. Luo Shuqing's poisonous tongue was as sharp as ever. It immediately made Luo Nan speechless. It was only then that he realized why it was so easy to pass the inspection last night. His aunt had probably already made up her mind to come here for a surprise inspection. Well, that was my aunt's style. Luo Shuqing looked at her watch and stood up. Let's go. Your uncle has already prepared dinner and is waiting for us. She didn't give Luo Nan any chance to object. Luo Nan still wanted to struggle a bit. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Since you know it's troublesome, don't go looking for trouble. Luo Shuqing walked to Luo Nan's side. She was a head shorter than her skinny nephew, but her imposing manner was a head higher. These are extraordinary times. You're extremely daring. You live in a high-rise apartment and aren't afraid of the building collapsing. But your uncle and I are old. We're scared witless. We're counting on you to go back and look after us. Luo Nan gaped, but he discovered that he didn't have the strength to argue. He really didn't have the strength. He had been working non-stop for 40 hours, and he hadn't closed his eyes once during this time. He faced the burning wraith, the burner, the ability users, and the secrets of the external neuron and gear. Countless information poured in and burst forth, and there was also the intense washing of emotions due to his mother and coward. He had practically overdrafted all of his energy. At this moment, he felt as if he had just returned home after a long and arduous march. Then, in the face of his aunt, who had always treated him as her own daughter, in the face of a rare family member who could completely relax, why should he argue and torment himself? In a moment of stupefaction, Luo Shuqing had already forcefully pulled Luo Nan's shoulder to face the door. Everyone, time is precious. Let's go. The familiar, unyielding, and affectionate action made the corner of Luo Nan's mouth twitch. He wanted to reveal a smile and announce his failure in front of his aunt. This was his usual routine, and it was what made his aunt most proud of him. Love goes small say net chu, but halfway through, he couldn't go any further. Because at this moment, the fatigue, hardship, pressure, and most importantly, the uncontrollable complex emotions that had accumulated over the past 2 days all rushed to his head, roaring as he searched for an opportunity to vent them. It seemed that any slight tug on the facial nerves would cause the fragile dam to collapse, and everything would flow out. There was an instant when Luo Nan even wanted to drag his aunt back to school. He wanted to point out gear and the tree hole for her to see. He wanted to ask her if she felt the same way he did. However, when he thought about how his aunt knew almost nothing about his mother, this impulse disappeared. Some things were destined to be shouldered by oneself. No one would be able to fully accept and understand your feelings. The fact that he was able to tell Xie Junping so much today was already a sign of him losing control of his emotions. It would be difficult for him to do so again. 100 thoughts crossed Luo Nan's mind. In the end, Luo Nan just slightly raised his head to avoid letting his aunt see the sorry appearance of him losing control of his facial expression. But how to resolve this extremely unnatural movement was beyond his ability. Just as he was feeling awkward, his wristband vibrated. Luo Nan turned around in practically an instant, his back facing his aunt. He took a deep breath before connecting to his wristband. A half-familiar yet half-familiar voice immediately transmitted over, "Hey handsome, wanna meet?" "What's up?" Luo Nan already saw that it was Zhang Yingying's number. He didn't have the strength to tangle with this overly lively woman with words, but the hoarseness of his voice shocked him the instant he opened his mouth. Afraid that his aunt would hear something strange, Luo Nan walked a few steps into the house. Zhang Yingying was quite sharp. She could hear that Luo Nan's state was a bit off. She asked curiously, "Are you sleeping? Where are you?" Luo Nan adjusted his voice and did his best to use short and clear words, "At home." "Okay. I think so too. But your heart is quite big. You haven't received a notice of the entrance exam all day. You don't even know to call and ask." How could Luo Nan say that he had completely forgotten about this matter? "I give it to you. Where did the initiative of the job seeker this morning go?" "I still remember even now, teacher, I want to be a staff member." The young girl pinched her throat, fabricating words that Luo Nan had never said before. Luo Nan actually laughed. Far too many things had happened today. From Luo Nan's perspective, each matter was heavier than the last. His thoughts had already been forced into a very narrow region. Zhang Yingying's jesting brought it up made his mind much clearer. The Professional Ability User Society. Okay, the Explorer Society was a platform that he had to fight for no matter what. Right now he didn't have the extra strength to go and think about things that had already happened. He didn't have any hope of becoming emotional and fretful. He asked, "It's starting." Aha. Hurry back right now. Your main examiner is about to arrive at the large living area outside of Acumen College, the Limestone Water Village pub. I'll explain the specifics to you when you arrive. I feel that your chance has come. Limestone Water Village pub. Could this call have come 20 minutes earlier? Luo Nan was speechless for a time, but he didn't say much. After all, this phone call gave him an excellent reason. He hung up and his mood more or less calmed down. He turned around and wanted to speak to his aunt. But he never expected to meet Mrs. Luo Shuqing's curious gaze. "You're going out?" Yes. A date? No. Luo Nan immediately shrunk back. Then what is it? Luo Shuqing didn't let him off. It's a gathering. A gathering? Limestone Water Village pub. I remember that it's near your school. Why don't you just go there? Didn't I forget? Luo Nan was struggling to deal with this when he suddenly remembered something. It seemed that Shuelei's girlfriend had mentioned this afternoon. He operated his wristband on the spot and sure enough, he received an invitation from the Acumen Mutual Assistance Association in his mailbox. Coincidentally, the Acumen Mutual Assistance Association's gathering location was also the Limestone Water Village pub. Of course, the meeting time had already passed, but it didn't affect him taking the blame. Luo Nan showed the email to his aunt. This is the school's Mutual Assistance Association activity. It's a very formal cold dinner party. Mutual Assistance Association. Why are you interested in it? Luo Shuqing understood her child's temperament the best. With his introverted and autistic personality, how could he be interested in this kind of social gathering? Luo Nan took out a ready-made reason. The school's societies are very exclusive. It would be very troublesome without a senior to lead the way. I still haven't joined a society yet. I'm afraid of getting my points deducted, so... You didn't pass the Mystic Arts Research Society test. Yeah. Did you take the initiative to go to the Mutual Assistance Association? No, they came to find me. Luo Shuqing finally believed him when she saw her nephew's introverted and immature expression. She shook her head. Acumen College is getting worse with each batch. If you knew this earlier, why did you set your mind on getting in? Luo Nan was silent. Luo Shuqing still wanted to say more, but she suddenly saw Luo Nan's thin figure standing in the room. Behind him was the familiar apartment furnishings. She was in a trance as if she had gone back in time 20 years ago. He was also a young man, and he was smiling at her. Her heart ached slightly. When she looked again, that high-spirited smile had already been replaced by her nephew's stiff and dull face. Silence and oppression accumulated in the doorway. Luo Nan thought that his reason had failed, but his face went slightly cold. It was his aunt's palm. She lightly patted him, then go tidy up a bit. The handsome boy of the Luo family can't be looked down upon. Chapter 60. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuanet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan raised his head in astonishment and met his aunt's eyes. This strong woman, who was a department head in a multinational company, was frowning. Don't tell me you want to wear your school uniform to the gathering. No, I'm going to wash my face. How could Luo Nan not know that he had passed the test? He ran into the house in a hurry. During this time, he took the time to glance at the study. The large black leather box on the desk was very eye-catching, but there were no signs of it being moved, which made him heave a sigh of relief. Luo Nan quickly changed into casual clothes and came out. Luo Shuqing was actually a little dissatisfied with his appearance. He was clearly going to attend a gathering, but he still brought an old-fashioned notebook, as if he was going to take notes of a meeting. What was going on? In the end, she didn't point it out. She just said, "Let's go." Then she left first. Clearly, she was going to send Luo Nan to the gathering location. Luo Nan was already used to his aunt's forceful style. He was a well-behaved and obedient child. The 20-minute drive to the gathering place was destined to be full of struggles. Luo Nan's lackluster high school life had lasted less than a month. He had practically been asked about everything. The emphasis was placed on his relationships with his classmates. This caused Luo Nan, whose domain was practically blank, to be in quite a sorry state. They made it to the Limestone Water Village pub with great difficulty. Luo Shuqing was like the most dutiful of chauffeurs. She directly drove the flying car to the lobby and indicated that Luo Nan could get off. At the same time, her sharp eyes swept the lobby of the hotel. Luo Nan knew what his aunt was thinking, but he didn't have a single method to deal with it. He could only pray a few times in his heart, open the door, get off the car, and enter the lobby. Perhaps his luck had taken a turn for the better, but Luo Nan really did discover the sign-in area of the interactive meeting in a corner of the hall according to the hint of the invitation email. Even though there was no one on duty there, the electronic sign-in screen was still there. Luo Nan was able to find his name without a hitch. When he finished signing, his aunt's call came. "Don't stay out too late. Call me when the party is over." Luo Nan let out a sigh of relief when Luo Shuqing's flying car drove away outside the hotel. He glanced at the number of people who had signed in. There were actually more than 1,000 people. In Acumen College, due to the existence of the upper limit of society members, no society would have this kind of scale. Only an inter-society sorority could pull out such a grand display. Since there were so many people, one more or one less wouldn't make a difference. He didn't have to run over halfway and attract unwanted attention. However, Zhang Yingying was really unreliable. From the tone of the phone, it sounded like she had been waiting in the hotel for a long time. But where was she now? Luo Nan was about to contact her again, but before he could even dial out the number, he heard laughter coming from behind him. "Nanster, I thought you weren't coming." As he spoke, the sturdy Shuelei strode over. Beside him was his girlfriend, Chen Xiaolin. Both of them were tall and had long legs. In just a few steps, they had already reached the front. Luo Nan hastily ended the call. He felt awkward and baffled. Weren't these two people too well informed? He had only signed his name. If it was only Shuelei, it would be easy to handle. But facing Chen Xiaolin, Luo Nan still needed to be courteous. "Apologies, Senior Sister Chen. I was busy so I came late." Chen Xiaolin pursed her lips into a smile. "Leister, and I didn't think you would come. I was shocked to see the message on the sign-in screen." This. Luo Nan didn't know how to respond for a time. Chen Xiaolin seemed to have drunk a bit of alcohol. Her cheeks were slightly red and she spoke quite straightforwardly, "But it's good that Junior could come. You're giving me face. After all, your sign-in counts as my performance." Having spoken to this point, Luo Nan naturally couldn't say that he didn't want to come. He actually wanted to leave. He could only follow the two of them to the banquet hall. It was just as Chen Xiaolin said. The cold dinner this time was very formal. There was a big shot from the student council who pulled in sponsors. They reserved the number 1 banquet hall of the hotel. The scene was extremely grand. Number 1 banquet hall was on the 27th floor. There were no unused elevators in the hall, so the three of them chatted as they waited. Chen Xiaolin talked about the matter of the society in a few words. This was also the reason why she invited Luo Nan to participate in the banquet. I've already found people related to the matter of the society. I'll bring you and Leicester to meet them later. Do your best to pick one that is more to your liking. Leicester, don't say that the society is boring. There are no credits. Luo Nan had no choice but to open his mouth. Senior sister, the matter regarding the society, actually, Chen Xiaolin frowned. You did it ahead of time. Luo Nan nodded in agreement. Li Mingde did it. Chen Xiaolin's face flushed red again. This time it wasn't just because she was drunk, but because she was angry. Junior, I've already mentioned it to you. The matter of the society is too complicated. It's not what you think it is. Do you know where Li Mingde is right now? He's in this hotel. He's being entertained in a private room. Even if you have to go through him, do you think it's more effective in his office or here? She's drunk. Shuai Lei first reminded Luo Nan in a low voice. Then he turned to face Chen Xiaolin and guaranteed, Nanster definitely didn't go through the procedures with Elder Illustrious Virtue. I can testify to this. Elder Illustrious Virtue was quite angry at the time. Luo Nan could see Chen Xiaolin's state. He wasn't angry, but he found it strange that Shuai Lei didn't explain the matter clearly to Chen Xiaolin. I asked Shuai Lei in a whisper, and he shrugged. Isn't there that Senior Xie? He has a lot of connections there, and I'm not good with words. Luo Nan immediately understood that this sturdy young man of the same age with rough lines actually had quite a plan in mind. He was absolutely not a boorish fellow who couldn't even keep his mouth shut. What are you guys talking about? Chen Xiaolin frowned and stared at them. At this time, she was tipsy and looked charmingly naive. Luo Nan and Shuai Lei raised their heads together. They were just about to explain when the elevator door opened and a dozen or so people walked out. It looked like the atmosphere was pretty good. Their laughter was loud and clear. Shuai Lei wasn't interested in these things. He blocked the elevator door and let Chen Xiaolin and Luo Nan get in. Unexpectedly, Chen Xiaolin pulled him back. Wait. Ha! You see that person? He just came out of the elevator. The youngest one. I just told you about him. He's the vice president of the student council, Chen Weikan. He's the president of the Mutual Assistance Society. He's my immediate superior. Luo Nan and Shuai Lei both looked over. The group of people had already walked out of the hall and were chatting outside. They couldn't see too clearly due to the contrast in the lighting. But from what they remembered, there weren't many young people inside. Chen Xiaolin took a few deep breaths in an attempt to lower her tipsy state a bit. Then she reminded them, Senior Chen is an authoritative figure in the student council. His family seems to have military connections. He's quite a nice person normally because we're from the same family. Our relationship is quite good. I didn't ask him for help with this matter, but he mentioned it. It will certainly be a lot easier to handle. She was going to strike up a conversation. Shuai Lei and Luo Nan's gazes locked. They could both see the lack of interest in each other. However, Shuai Lei soon grinned and was secretly kicked by Chen Xiaolin's pointed high heel. Chapter 61. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuai provides you with wonderful novels to read. Look at the people that he went out with. Just the ones that I know include the heads of the parent-teacher conference, the board of directors, and the society office. These are all people that he invited to raise the standards of the cold dinner party. Even Mingde Lao Xian is not qualified to be among them. Love go small say netku if you talk to him, just a few words will save you a lot of trouble. Chen Xiaolin was exasperated that Shuai Lei didn't live up to her expectations. Shuai Lei also frowned. He really couldn't do such a thing. Without waiting for a winner to be decided between the two, Chen Weikan and the others returned to the hall after sending off the guests who raised the standards. Seeing that they were approaching, Chen Xiaolin secretly pushed Shuelei, reminding him to open the elevator door. Then, she walked up to them and smiled sweetly. President Chen, on the other side, Chen Xiaolin greeted the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Association one by one. Shuelei hesitated for a moment, but his feet didn't move. This caused him to fall behind a beat. In front of him, Chen Xiaolin turned around, and her face stiffened. Luo Nan saw that the situation was far from good, so he gave Shuelei a push. He himself stood at the entrance of the elevator, setting up a temporary waiting mode. By the time he raised his head, Shuelei had finally greeted the other side, but there was no more. It was mainly Chen Xiaolin who was holding the fort. The group moved towards the elevator. Chen Weikan, who was in the lead, looked really outstanding. He was tall and not particularly handsome, but his smile was gentle and a little distant. He also greeted Chen Xiaolin and Shuelei without lacking in etiquette, but his footsteps did not stop as he headed straight for the elevator. Clearly, he was the kind of person who would make others match his pace. He was a rather domineering character. In comparison, Luo Nan felt that he, who was standing at the entrance of the elevator, was quite like a doorman. Just as they reached the middle of the lobby, another group of people entered the hotel. The one in the lead was a woman in professional attire. She was carrying a rather retro folder and walking in a hurry. At first glance, she looked like a white-collar worker. Behind her were four rather capable and strong men, who were also in a hurry. This group of people was much faster than Chen Weizan's group. Especially the white-collared woman in front of him. Her figure was definitely more than 1.7 meters, and she wore a pair of high-heeled shoes that were more than 5 centimeters high. Although there was nothing special about her traditional suit and trousers, it matched her tall and slender figure. Especially her long legs, under the slim trousers, the lines were beautiful, it was simply soul-stirring. Chen Xiaolin was already a tall and thin beauty, but she was still half a head shorter than the white-collared woman. This was most obvious when the two of them passed each other. Although the white-collared woman had an amazing model body, her steps were not cat-like. The distance between her steps was large, and she moved forward in a straight line. Even the four strong men behind her had a hard time following. When he got closer, he could see that the appearance of this white-collared lady matched her figure perfectly. Her silhouette was clear and solid, like a sculpture, but there was a coldness that kept people away. In comparison, beauty was secondary. At this moment, she was frowning as if she was thinking about something. She walked into the elevator and ignored everyone else. A few strong men followed behind him, and in the blink of an eye, they filled up half of the elevator. Well, Luo Nan had really become a doorman now. Chen Weikan was a bit stupefied when the white-collared woman walked by like the wind. Only when he saw the face of the white-collared woman through the lights of the elevator did he wake up from a dream. He called out in a probing manner, "Sis. Sister Fong." The white-collared woman slightly raised her head. Her gaze swept over Chen Weizan's face, and her frown deepened. Clearly, she did not recognize who he was. Chen Weikan was certain of his own guess. He hurried 2 steps forward and laughed, "Hello, Sister Fong. I'm Chen Weikan. My father is the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Xia City Close Defense Army, Chen Hanxing." He strode into the elevator, and his subordinates behind him, Chen Xiaolin, Shuelei, and the others naturally followed him in. It was a grandiose and imposing scene. The white-collared woman's gaze swept across everyone's faces at this time. It was impossible to tell whether she was happy or angry, but Chen Weikan thought of a certain rumor. His heart suddenly jumped, and he turned his hand to block the elevator door, blocking everyone behind him. His forearm touched something at this time, but he was disinclined to pay attention to it. He turned his body to the side and didn't explain. He just said in a low voice, "You guys go next." He pressed the button to close the elevator door as he spoke, blocking the others outside. F***ck me. Luo Nan could clearly hear Shuelei's cursing. Then he saw Shuelei come over with a dark expression. He wanted to press the elevator button, but there were two people in between. It took a bit of time, and by the time he arrived, the elevator had already gone up. He was a step too late no matter what. He looked at Chen Xiaolin again, and she was covering her chest with her hand. Chen Weikan had just extended his hand to block people, but he had bumped into her chest. This was a very disrespectful behavior. Of course, the elevator clearly could fit, but it was forcefully cut in two. This kind of behavior was even more arrogant. Shuelei was a simple and honest person, but this didn't mean that he didn't have a temper. He didn't grab Chen Weikan, and his eyes glared at the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Society. His expression was quite unfriendly. If his tongue was handy, he would have started cursing right now. Those who were able to mix their way to the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Society, this sort of cross-society friendship society, were all shrewd people. They had a deeper understanding of Chen Weikan. Even though they felt uncomfortable in their hearts, they still had to protect the president's face, and at the same time, their own face. Someone immediately laughed, maybe it's some big sponsor. Speaking of which, President Chen is really working hard. Is he going to use a pretty boy trick? Chen Xiaolin came back to her senses from the side. She pulled Shuelei and whispered, "He didn't do it on purpose. Just look at that woman. You can tell that she's not easy to mess with." Perhaps these words were all reasons, but from Shuelei's perspective, they were too fucking roundabout. There wasn't a bit of sincerity in the roundabout. They were all bullshit. He looked around at the group of people at the elevator entrance, including Chen Xiaolin. His breathing grew heavier, and it was clear that the rage in his heart was rising. Luo Nan was just about to step forward when he saw the situation, but then he felt his arms sink. Then a laughing voice entered his ear, "What a rude fellow. You actually didn't wait at the door. Luckily my eyes are sharp. I nearly missed you." Zhang Yingying had arrived. Luo Nan turned his head and saw that this young female lawyer had already changed into a completely different attire than when she was on the warship. A denim jacket paired with a short skirt revealed her snow-white long legs. She wore leggings and open-toed Roman shoes. It was almost summer attire, and she radiated with vitality. Zhang Yingying's sudden insertion actually eased the tense atmosphere a bit. Chen Xiaolin could feel her boyfriend's rage as well as his clearly damaged self-esteem. But she didn't know how to console him for a time. She could dispel Shuelei's rage without provoking the group of people in the Mutual Assistance Society. She could only try to divert his attention. She first pulled on Shuelei's stiff arm. Her posture was exactly the same as Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying's. She forced a smile and greeted him, "Nanster, is this your girlfriend?" Luo Nan was just about to shake his head when Zhang Yingying giggled to the side as she responded, "Hello everyone. I'm one of Luo Nan's pursuers. Just call me Yingying." Zhang Yingying followed him out of the elevator and said in shock, "It can't be. This doesn't make sense. My judgment shouldn't be wrong, this woman's buzzing was annoying." Luo Nan's already fuzzy train of thought was completely messed up. There were already "welcome to the society," and so on. Of course he wouldn't believe that he had failed the evaluation. He gave a cursory glance at the information-filling interface. The vast majority of the fields had drop-down options, probably to take into consideration the fuzzy nature of telepathy input. All he had to do was choose from among them. But aside from the basic age and gender, he had never seen most of the other fields. For example, the Ability Source Flow column. There were two drop-down options. One was the Talent Flow, and the other was the System Flow. What the hell? Luo Nan spoke in a bad mood. Am I the Talent Flow or the System Flow? Of course it's the Talent Flow. Ha! Luo Nan's mind stirred and he confirmed the options. But he still felt that he didn't understand. What's the difference between the Talent Flow and the System Flow? The Talent Flow is when one is born with a certain special ability. The System Flow is when one relies on an existing cultivation system to undergo arduous tempering. Zhang Yingying's voice was a bit floaty, but Luo Nan had already decisively overturned her judgment before she could finish speaking. I'm the System Flow. What a joke. If he chose the Talent Flow, then wouldn't his grandfather's decades of research and his 5 years of hard work be completely negated? His mind stirred again and he had already changed the options on the data. But before he could ask his next question, his neck suddenly tightened. Zhang Yingying had actually tightly strangled him from behind. At the same time, the young woman's energetic body pressed tightly against him, causing him to sway violently. You saw the interface, right? You're filling out the form right. You still haven't awakened right. A precision-oriented mental strengthening. This is going to defy the natural order. Luo Nan nearly fainted from Zhang Yingying's stranglehold. His brain was already a mush. Chapter 63. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Speak Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying disregarded the situation and caused a ruckus. Of course, it was very eye-catching. Shuelei and the others, who were about to enter the banquet venue, turned their heads one after another. They couldn't hear what Zhang Yingying was saying, but they were all dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Luo Nan was strangled by Zhang Yingying, unable to make any movements. Zhang Yingying smiled and waved her hand to the front, strangling Luo Nan to a corner. Shuelei and the others could only assume that the young couple had some private things to say. They glanced at each other, shook their heads, and entered the venue. After this interruption, the stiff atmosphere between Chen Xiaolin and Shuelei continued to ease. The two found an opening and went to the other side to talk. Let go. Luo Nan was strangled by the neck and forcibly kidnapped by a woman, and he didn't even have the strength to fight back. Luo Nan's self-esteem suffered a serious injury. He was truly a bit annoyed. It was true that Zhang Yingying was a familiar person, but from his perspective, he and Zhang Yingying clearly weren't that familiar. Perhaps it was because she felt his mood, or perhaps it was because her own excitement had passed, but Zhang Yingying took the initiative to loosen her arm. She recovered her cheerful appearance and pressed down on Luo Nan's chest before he flipped out. I'm worried that you haven't figured out the situation yet. Are you sure you came to participate in this cold dinner party? Luo Nan was speechless for a time, but the anger in his heart only increased. He took a deep breath. Then why did you follow me to the 27th floor? Because I had to make a choice. Zhang Yingying had a self-confident appearance. If you had no reaction at all to the hexier, then I would have kicked you down the stairs to avoid losing face. Luo Nan sneered. Now that I have a reaction, you're going to strangle me. Hee, it was just an accident caused by a moment of excitement. Men can't be small, that. I'm happy for you. After all, it's really rare for an ability user candidate like you, who hasn't awakened yet, to be able to enter the psychic wave network the moment you touch the hexier. Psychic wave network. It was unavoidable for Luo Nan's attention to be diverted. Frankly speaking, Zhang Yingying's previous appearance of shouting and wrangling gave him a bit of an idea. Zhang Yingying asked him back, what do you think the hexier is? A special electronic device. Bingo! Hexier is a psychic tool made by President Ouyang of the branch. Don't complain, Mr. President has always been weak at naming things. Zhang Yingying giggled as she sold out another person. I won't explain the concept to you. I'll let the president talk to you personally later. You only need to understand that the Hexier is a special communication tool. It has a total of 6 communication levels. The simplest one is the radio, which is a one-way transmission of psychic waves. As long as you are an ability user or have the talent of an ability user and can receive this special psychic wave, you will be considered qualified. Luo Nan thought of that gentle artificial voice, the one that says welcome to the club. Aha! By the way, you should have a serial number, right? What is it again? 5357. Okay, wait for me to add you as a friend. Zhang Yingying suddenly paused. She blinked and changed her mind. Why don't you add me to familiarize yourself with the operation? My number is 6166. Let me tell you by the way. The next 2 communication levels are the television and the computer. The television is a one-way transmission of signals. It tests the ability user's mental senses and materialization abilities. We call it synesthesia. You are a precision type of mental enhancement. You have an advantage in this aspect. And when you reach the computer level, you can realize human-computer interaction. Then you can use the special frequency set up by the society to achieve mutual communication between network users. In order to reach this level, you need to have a bit of mental interference with reality. This is normally the privilege of the awakened. But since you are a psychic, perhaps you have a talent bonus. I'm not a talent type. Luo Nan emphasized once more. He cared a great deal about this. He was certain that if he didn't have a breakthrough in the format and didn't form the heavily chained crow, then he absolutely wouldn't be a psychic, perhaps he wasn't a psychic at all. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. Okay, up to you. But if you don't add me as a friend, then I'm going to doubt whether or not you really have the ability. Luo Nan's face was cold as he tried to add her as a friend according to Zhang Yingying's words. But there was still a problem before his eyes. Information. Who's going to fill out stuff like information? What if some guy who doesn't like you sees it? Wouldn't that be sending your neck to the blade of someone else? Zhang Yingying's face was full of disdain as she encouraged Luo Nan, just skip it. Come, use telepathy to control it. Try adding me as a friend. Relax, the Hexier's fuzzy calculation ability is quite strong. As long as you have the ability, just think about it. Wow! Luo Nan saw the translucent interface before his eyes change amidst Zhang Yingying's gasp of surprise. It displayed, you have already become a friend with 6166. Then a furry squirrel jumped out and bowed towards him. On the other side, Zhang Yingying burst into laughter. Oh my god. You're using your school photo. So stupid. Even if you use a squirrel to act cute, there's still the word stupid in front of it. Luo Nan retorted sarcastically. But he also discovered that this was no different from the communication software on the market. He experimentally changed the effect of his display and soon a relevant modification interface popped up. Luo Nan thought for a bit and sent his visualization diagram up. The tetrahedron and its inscribed sphere spun in the dark void. It gave off a rather mysterious and serene feeling. Luo Nan had never considered this diagram to be some sort of secret that couldn't be announced. On the contrary, he wanted to publicize this diagram to as many people as possible, as well as the various theories related to it belonging to his grandfather. It was just that Luo Nan's understanding of the marvels within was far too lacking. He simply didn't have the qualifications to preach it. But as long as he had the chance, he would be happy to let more people have a deeper understanding of the diagram. As Luo Nan's good friend, Zhang Yingying naturally saw this change in the first instance. She mumbled old pedant, but didn't say anything. Luo Nan was still pondering over the deeper usage of the Hexier. After all, Zhang Yingying had said that it had a total of 6 application levels. She had only talked about 3 before. What were the last 3? But a notification sound rang out before he could ask in detail. A friend request popped up on his Retina interface. He had just entered the network. Where did this friend request come from? He swept a glance at the number and saw that it was displayed as 5156. Of course, he couldn't see anything from this. He could only ask Zhang Yingying, who's 5156. 5156. Zhang Yingying blinked her eyes. It seemed that she confirmed it with her own hex year. Finally, she made an expression of sudden realization. It's the secretary assigned to you. The society has always treated its members very well. Hee hee. It would be strange if I believed you. Luo Nan cast a glance at Zhang Yingying. In the end, he still added 5156 as a friend. Soon, a new request was sent over, but it was the wartime encrypted communication that made him speechless. He couldn't help but glance at Zhang Yingying. He suspected that this woman was setting up an ambush, but in the end, he still accepted the call. He had just accepted the request when a cold and clear female voice entered his ear. It was not the slightest bit sloppy. Mr. Luo, I'm the temporary secretary arranged by the society, Fang Yueyin. Which floor are you on? I'll come pick you up. You? Luo Nan hadn't come back to his senses yet when this secretary Fang spoke. Please share your geographical location at the same time. This will facilitate wartime communications. Over. Had he returned to the era of the Third World War? Chapter 64. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. SpeakNet provides you with wonderful novels to read. I kneel. Apologies to all the readers at the beginning of the month. I just discovered that the 2 characters, Fang Yueyin and He Wei, had a conflict with the settings of the versions. I didn't check them out when I posted the drafts. When I wrote later, I followed the impression of a certain version, resulting in many mistakes. I've already revised the contents of Chapter 19, Part 1, and the title and contents of Chapter 35. This character has been renamed to He Yueyin. She is the captain he who appeared in the first volume. Please forgive me, readers. Readers who use the Crosscut app, if you wish to obtain a better reading experience, please erase all data from the app and download again. Lose weight and kowtow. No, this atmosphere isn't right. Luo Nan always had a clear understanding of his own position. Even if he jumped out of the circle of normal society and entered the special domain of the Wilderness Explorer Society, he was still a hardworking employee. He still hadn't familiarized himself with the working environment up until now. Naturally, he hadn't found a suitable position. But now you're telling me that he even has a secretary. Luo Nan stared at Zhang Yingying. Without a doubt, this innocent-looking woman certainly knew the cause and effect. Zhang Yingying's face was as white as a lotus flower. Did your secretary say how to arrange things? Luo Nan curled his lips. How did you guys arrange things before? You just invited me to walk in the elevator? Now that the evaluation is over, can I go home? Don't. The entrance evaluation is over, but there are other advanced evaluations. The society has already booked a room on the 81st floor. Hee hee, we'll entertain you well. You just need to bury your head in there and draw. Draw. Luo Nan's train of thought gradually straightened out. He stared coldly at her. You guys want to evaluate my psychic abilities. This is different from what you said. Zhang Yingying had an innocent expression. Yeah, I told you before. It's best not to expose the fact that you have psychic abilities. You should first familiarize yourself with the situation and the society. It won't be too late to take it out when your abilities truly awaken. Otherwise, many people will come to bother you. You won't be able to refuse them, and you might offend someone. Word for word, right? Luo Nan continued to stare at her. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. The problem is that my words aren't worth a fart. Now that the boss had spoken, the situation had changed. What else could I do? I was going to explain it to you when we get there, but since you can already see the interface and control it with your mind, please switch to the homepage announcement area. The translucent interface on Luo Nan's retina underwent a change following Zhang Yingying's guidance. As far as the eye could see, the rust-colored soil and the wave-like cracks continued to extend endlessly into the depths. You should have already seen the main interface. It's the wilderness, right? There's a notice board by the side of the road. It's there. What kind of third-rate game interface is this? Luo Nan cursed silently as he read the information. In less than half a second, words like Darksider species, human-faced arachnid, virus, and so on swarmed in. They interweaved to form a blurry and gloomy screen of darkness before his eyes. Fine cold sweat seeped out from Luo Nan's spine with a whoosh. See, do I still need to say more? Right now, it was a war against the Darksider race and its infected. The government, the military, the society, and Quantum Corporation are sparing no expense to launch a search and annihilation operation in the entire city. This epidemic must be completely contained before it spreads on a large scale. Zhang Yingying's finger tapped on Luo Nan's chest, one tap after another. Her face was devoid of a rare smile. My attitude is very serious. The society's attitude is also very serious. Every ability user, no matter if they're veterans or rookies, must contribute their strength when it comes to matters related to our safety. Moreover, Mr. Luo, who has just joined the society, you are a psychic. For the current society, you are what we need the most precious resource. Luo Nan muttered, the most precious resource? Of course. Do you know how many psychics the society has right now? Even a branch like Xia City, which has over 1,000 people, only has 4. One of them is currently exploring the wilderness and won't be able to rush back in a short amount of time. As for the remaining 3, Old Master Yu is nearly 100 years old. It would be inhumane to have him run around day and night. He can only sit in the central command. Then East City and West City are divided. Old Gao and Old Bai are working hard right now. And then you discovered a new coolie. Luo Nan sneered in order to conceal the nervousness in his heart. In a certain sense, he could be considered a virus-infected person. It was just that the Darksider seed that had invaded his body had been subdued by the dark chains formed by the format's power. But the problem was that this kind of subduing didn't eliminate the roots. The burning wraith had transformed into the wraith sign, but it still retained its instincts. It was still able to devour its own kind to strengthen itself. Only the heavens knew whether or not his current state could be considered an infected person in the eyes of a group of ability users. Whether or not he was still a target to be strangled. But Luo Nan also had a sort of indescribable excitement amidst his nervousness. The human-faced arachnid. This sort of peculiar existence expanded the depth and breadth of his understanding of the burning wraith in an instant. It allowed him to overlook the ins and outs of this matter from a higher level. It allowed him to overlook the cause and effect of this matter. Moreover, he had a completely new concept of what he could do in the future. This was a large net laid down by the human-faced arachnid. He was originally a node in this net, but now it had already mutated. From the society's judgment, any other node that carried out the net operation would probably restore the human-faced arachnid to its peak. The human-faced arachnid's treacherous and bewitching nature would be displayed to the fullest. But looking at how his format was suppressing the wraith sign, wouldn't he be able to completely grasp the terrifying power of the human-faced arachnid in the end if he were to start from this point? Wasn't this the extraordinary power he had always been pursuing? It was also a power grasped by the power of his format. Perhaps this was where the mysteries of his grandfather's research lay. Hey. What are you thinking about? You're not scared stupid, are you? Luo Nan came back to his senses in a daze. He didn't immediately respond. Zhang Yingying patted his shoulder. Don't be scared. It's normal to be scared. But it's already very gratifying that you didn't cry for your mother. Relax. We just want to borrow your marvelous draw ability. And we'll absolutely protect you. Look, you have me now. Then the society arranged a full-time secretary for you. It's He Yuan, right? She's a monster who entered the society with a C+ score. Ah, a genius. Her true strength can only be higher and not lower. Luo Nan concealed a smile. Don't they say that only psychics are useful when facing the Darksider species? What are you thinking about? Any qualified awakened has a method to lock onto the Darksider species in a true battle. It's just that each method is different. Many people can even see it with their naked eyes. Zhang Yingying solemnly corrected Luo Nan's preposterous and laughable train of thought. The true problem is that when the Darksider species is in a hidden state, only psychics can discover the clues. The society is relying on your ability in this aspect. Who would send you to the front lines? Oh really? Luo Nan became even more nervous. It seemed that his situation was more similar to that of an awakened. It was also a intuition. At most, he could rely on the Wraith sign to sense it at close range. As for psychics, when he fooled Zhang Yingying, all he did was draw what he saw. In addition, Li Shueqing had a bit of a psychic's intent. But the premise was that the burning wraith on Li Shueqing's body had already taken form. They could sense each other. This kind of situation was seriously different from the long-range senses of a psychic. What to do? Luo Nan wanted to pick up his notebook right now. He wanted to make some gestures to avoid making a fool of himself on stage. In fact, he really did take out his notebook. He opened the flexible e-ink screen and drawing software. Chapter 65. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuan.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying burst out laughing when she saw this. Sharpening a spear at the last minute. Even if it's not fast, it's still good. Do you really think this is an exam? Luo Nan didn't even raise his head. Someone said that I'm a psychic, but I've never admitted it. Now that it seems like it's not bad, I'll draw a picture to get a feel for it. If it really is. You mentioned what if to me. Zhang Yingying saw that Luo Nan wasn't sharpening his spear at the last minute. Instead, he was running away at the last minute. Her almond eyes immediately widened and she grabbed him by the collar. You're able to draw my white rainbow and that bizarre prison building sketch. How could you not be a psychic? Sure, I'm a shaman. Luo Nan continued to place his gaze on the drawing software. He wanted to draw something, but his mind was in chaos. He had no idea what to draw at all. At this time, Zhang Yingying was still talking noisily in his ear, so he decided to just throw in the towel. You were the one who introduced the concept of shamans to me. I'll also take the association's offer. Anyways, in the end, it'll be you, Sister Yingying, paying the bill, right? Oh. Luo Nan had never used such an intimate form of address before. It made Zhang Yingying fall back in disgust. Kids with reverse psychology were not easy to deal with. Zhang Yingying's eyeballs swiveled. Her hand that was gripping Luo Nan's collar loosened a bit. It's just hiring a C++ secretary and bodyguard. I can afford it for one night at most. On the other hand, if you want to enjoy this kind of treatment for a long time, then you'll have to put in a bit of effort. Oh right, you seem to have said that you needed inspiration or something. Do you want to find a bit of excitement? Acumen College's large living area has a very high level of service. In this mutually shameless competition, Luo Nan was defeated by Zhang Yingying's abundant experience in the end. He pursed his lips and said nothing. Distractedly, he drew meaningless lines on his graphics software. At the end of the day, he still cared a lot about the professional association's courtesy. This was a high starting point that he had never imagined before, and it was also a great opportunity that fell from the sky. He didn't want to let this opportunity slip through his fingers, so he had to do something. Luo Nan tried to recall this morning's practice that was most similar to a psychic's methods. But that dreamlike feeling was really too mysterious, and with his current restless state, it was really difficult for him to completely recreate it. Zhang Yingying tilted her head and looked at the messy lines on the flexible screen. The more she looked, the more suspicious she became. Hey, if you want to make fun of yourself, don't drag me into it. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to her. Someone walked past them at this time, and the person felt a bit familiar. Raising his head, he saw that it was Shui Lei and Chen Xiaolin. Both of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Clearly, the previous conversation had not been resolved. The atmosphere between the two of them was extremely tense. At this time, they were walking in the direction of the elevator, not knowing what they were going to do. Under such circumstances, it was obviously not appropriate to greet them. Luo Nan could only pretend that he didn't see anything. He lowered his head and smeared 2 more times, but he inexplicably drew out the abstract lines of the wraith sign. Moreover, it was done in one go. It had never been so efficient before. Luo Nan only came back to his senses when the symbol took form. His heart palpitated slightly. He was worried that Zhang Yingying would see some clues, so he raised his head to glance at her. He saw that this woman had long since been dazzled by his chaotic lines. She was a bit foolish for once. You feel something? Luo Nan was just about to respond with a sentence when he suddenly went mute. Suddenly drawing the wraith sign had some ominous implications. In the next moment, he completely followed his instincts and turned his head. Shui Lei and Chen Xiaolin had already gotten into the elevator. The lights in the elevator shone down, but they were unable to illuminate the gloomy faces of the two. He felt that a dispute could erupt between the two at any time. And at this time, a bizarre thought flashed through Luo Nan's mind. It was the information he had just looked up this morning. It came from the Secret Star forums. It was a suspected mental illness, a human tragedy triggered. The wife killed the husband, and before this, the husband and wife experienced a nightmare at the same time. Alert! 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 The bold-faced words of the Secret Star forums appeared in his mind. Luo Nan closed his notebook with a bang. He turned around and headed toward the elevator, shouting loudly at the same time, Shui Lei. This loud shout was absolutely impulsive. Even Luo Nan found it a bit hard to continue after the shout left his mouth. He didn't know how to explain himself. But right at this moment, a trembling sound rang out on the mental plane. The heavily chained crow hummed. And most importantly, the wraith sign at the very front of the chain lit up with a dark red glow. Luo Nan's mind throbbed, but what immediately floated up in his mind was that he didn't know what to do. This was because the wraith sign's senses clearly came from 2 completely opposite directions. One was directly in front, and the other was directly behind. Luo Nan could clearly see what was happening directly in front of him. Right when Shui Lei was staring at him in a daze, a ghost-like burning wraith appeared. Half of the wraith's body had sunk into Shui Lei's shoulder. It was unknown whether it was being pulled out or whether it was continuing to seep in. Reality and illusion interweaved. The strange scene of a human body and a wraith merging together made one's scalp go numb. And directly behind him, careful! Zhang Yingying's screech and the sharp whistling sound of tearing air rang out at the same time. The elevator door was already closing at this time. Luo Nan could clearly see a warped figure sticking to his body on the smooth metal door. The figure's shoulder exploded with blood. The blood sprayed out and landed on the side of Luo Nan's neck. And at the same time, Luo Nan's back violently shook. It was as if someone was pushing against him, causing him to fall forward. But the force was too great. In the end, Luo Nan's feet didn't touch the ground at all. He soared into the air and collided with the elevator door that had yet to close. The elevator door approached at high speed, and the gap between the doors slowly shrank. Luo Nan could roughly understand that he was probably being used as a tool to block the door. Then the elevator door opened to the two sides at this time. A figure staggered and fell to the side, smashing into a corner of the elevator. It was Chen Xiaolin. As for Shuelei, this big fellow who was being cut by half of the wraith was blocking the door. His simple and honest face even carried a bit of childishness. He was like an angry Vajra, and his thick palm chopped down at Luo Nan's face. Perhaps it was because of the haste, but Luo Nan didn't even have the time to stir up his negative emotions. Right now Luo Nan was actually quite calm. In the blink of an eye, Shuelei's palm cut past Luo Nan's ear. He grabbed Luo Nan's shoulder and pushed down lightly. Luo Nan instantly broke free from his suspended state. He involuntarily tumbled and fell into the corner of the elevator, in the same direction as Chen Xiaolin. Luo Nan's field of view spun as he tumbled, but the heavily chained crow drove the wraith sign. The entire surrounding environment of the elevator was mapped into his brain. At the same time, an angry roar rang out beside his ear. Shuelei had already collided with the shadow that had pounced into the elevator. It looked like Shuelei wanted to knock the person out of the elevator. But the opponent's momentum was far too strong. Shuelei's majestic body was actually completely unable to resist. His entire body fell backwards, smashing heavily into the back of the elevator. From Luo Nan's senses, it seemed as if the entire building was swaying. Chapter 66. Genius in 1 second. Remember, love, go away. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The swing of the elevator was quite intense. Perhaps the violent vibrations had caused some kind of circuit failure, but the elevator doors didn't even close. The entire elevator suddenly sank down, sinking no less than half a floor. Zhang Yingying, who had rushed up from behind, was nearly crushed to death in the intertwining cracks of the elevator. Fortunately, she was able to make an emergency stop, narrowly avoiding disaster. But she looked at the sealed entrance and stamped her feet in anxiety. The elevator soon came to a stop. This sort of maglev elevator floated within the magnetic passageway. The moment the elevator's swing exceeded the safety line, it would automatically activate its mechanical lock and fix its position. This also meant that the elevator would become a sealed space for a short period of time. Luo Nan and Chen Xiaolin didn't have the ability to fight. Their fates would be decided by Shuelei and his enemy, who were currently entangled together. Shuelei's face flushed red. The man wearing a black suit in front of him was a size smaller than him, but the strength the man displayed was far above his own. Shuelei's internal organs felt as if they had been flipped upside down after receiving a frontal attack. Even breathing was difficult for a few seconds. What was even more bizarre was that the other party clearly had a serious wound on his shoulder that tore through his flesh and bone. His face didn't have any distinctive features, but it was so apathetic that it made one's heart go cold. His exertion of strength wasn't affected at all. Right now, the two's arms were pressed against each other, and their legs were apart. Their entire bodies were entangled together. Shuelei was just about to use a wrestling method to seize back some of the initiative, but he saw his enemy open his mouth, revealing dense white teeth, and directly bite at Shuelei's throat. Shuelei grunted and relied on his height to smash down with his head. His forehead collided with the enemy's face, blocking this vicious beast-like bite. It was reasonable to say that Shuelei's choice was brave and correct. The position of his collision was also advantageous. But the other party was clearly bleeding from his nose and mouth, yet it was as if nothing had happened. Xuelei's head was dizzy, and in the end, it affected his body's exertion of strength. His feet floated slightly, and just as he was about to cry out in his heart, his whole body was lifted off the ground by the brute force of the other party. Then, the world spun around him, and he fell heavily on the metal floor with a hollow sound. This time, he almost threw up his heart and lungs. However, years of arduous training came into play. The instant Xuelei lost his balance, he almost instinctively twisted his legs, and in the end, he still managed to trip the enemy. Taking advantage of this gap, Xuelei's majestic body contracted at an unbelievable degree, and then bounced up again. Just as the enemy was about to pounce on him, Xuelei took advantage of the momentum to deliver another headbutt. This time, it was from the bottom up, hitting the enemy's chest. After 2 consecutive tremors, Xuelei and the enemy were pushed back at the same time, hitting the metal inner wall behind them. What was worth rejoicing about was that Xuelei's grasp of direction was quite good. He pushed the enemies in the opposite direction from Luo Nan and Chen Xiaolin. He leaned slightly to the side and was able to protect the two who had no combat strength. He should be able to take a breather now, right? Xuelei's chest heaved up and down violently. He didn't know why, but he was in a terrible state today. His stamina consumption was especially severe. The previous round of dangerous hand-to-hand combat had almost completely emptied his stamina. Was it because he was too nervous? Xuelei couldn't figure out his own situation, and the enemy in front of him didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he used a strange and unfocused gaze to look over here. He was simply like a mental patient. Are you guys crazy? Chen Xiaolin, who was in the corner, was finally able to somewhat react after a series of unforeseen events. Everything that happened before her eyes had already completely exceeded the limits of her common sense. She knew that her boyfriend could fight very well, but she had never seen him fight to the death without saying a word. There was absolutely no reason at all. Luo Nan, whom she had just gotten to know today, had joined in as well. It looked like he was standing on their side. Or perhaps it was because of this fellow that the inexplicable murderer was drawn in. What she couldn't bear the most was the, as it should be, expressions on their faces. What the hell was going on? Chen Xiaolin struggled to stand up. She felt a sense of absurdity and dread that separated herself from the rational dimension. It made her instinctively want to flee this area, to flee from these people. But how could she do this in the completely sealed elevator? She could only shout at the top of her lungs, "Can't you guys stop and talk nicely? We're all trapped right now. Shut up." Short shouts came from the mouths of 2 people at the same time. Xuelei and Luo Nan spoke in unison, shouting to stop Chen Xiaolin's irrational actions of not understanding the situation at all. After shouting, Xuelei locked onto the enemy in front of him with full concentration. Luo Nan spoke a few more words, "Senior sister, please calm your emotions, okay?" As he spoke, he turned his face to face Chen Xiaolin from all sides. Chen Xiaolin was stupefied for a moment. She was locked in place by Luo Nan's mottled and strange gaze. It was as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out in an instant. She leaned against the corner of the elevator, her mind a field of blankness. Luo Nan used hypnosis to temporarily control Chen Xiaolin. Then he raised his head to look at the upper part of the elevator. Xuelei's attention was on the formidable enemy before him, but Luo Nan's attention was on an even stranger level. The burning wraith that had struggled within Xuelei's body in the previous fight had already drilled out from Xuelei's body. It had seized a considerable amount of blood and energy. And at the same time, the burning wraith also leaped out from within the body of the fierce black-suited male. The two intertwined and fused together before Luo Nan could react, growing stronger in an instant. This sort of change really exceeded the scope of Luo Nan's reaction. Luo Nan also wanted to resolve this problem. The heavily chained crow had already been released and the wraith sign was glowing. But it didn't display the crushing superiority of the previous few times. It even displayed a bit of caution and conservatism. This was because the burning wraith that had just fused together in the elevator was the most powerful one Luo Nan had ever seen. Even the one Luo Nan had once controlled to turn the military transport ship upside down seemed to be somewhat inferior. The appearance of the burning wraith's body was even more similar to the appearance of the human-faced arachnid from the R&D district. Luo Nan saw the information from Quantum Corporation and confirmed a step further. The burning wraith's body was indeed like a hybrid between a human and a spider. To be more precise, it was a giant spider that was clinging onto the back of a human. Half of its body was fused into the human's body. The two shared the same head. It was ugly and demonic. The wraith floated in midair. Actually, it was still using a strange method to endlessly absorb the energy from Shui Lei and the black-suited male. Shui Lei's symptoms of being easily fatigued actually came from this. His opponent was actually more or less the same. Through the senses of the wraith sign, Luo Nan was able to estimate a few things on a deeper level. The current burning wraith had already devoured at least 10 or more of its own kind to display this sort of form. In other words, purely in terms of quantity, it was several times stronger than the wraith sign on Luo Nan's side. Luo Nan couldn't help but sigh at his own naivety as he thought about the hunting thoughts that had just existed. This was the rhythm of being devoured by the enemy. Chapter 67. A genius in 1 second remembers love go away. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan stared fixedly at the burning wraith within the elevator. The latter's attention shifted over accordingly. This was a sort of eye-to-eye contact. 6 bewitching flames lit up on the head of the burning wraith. They were 2 parallel rows, truly resembling the eyes of a spider. The color of each eye was different. They were divided into 6 colors: dusky yellow, dark red, light gray, ghostly green, deathly white, and jet black. Each dot was extremely small, but the color of each dot swayed back and forth. It was bewitching and strange, making one dizzy. Luo Nan looked over and many muddy and chaotic thoughts arose from the bottom of his heart. His entire mood swelled with irritation. He wished he could smash something to vent his emotions. Fortunately, the heavily chained crow trembled as its vibrating sound swept over, suppressing these inexplicable emotions and distracting thoughts. The demonic eyes of the burning wraith flickered and changed, clearly noticing Luo Nan's heavily chained crow. Of course, there was also the wraith sign that flickered at the very front. In Luo Nan's eyes, its first action was to assume a pouncing posture. This was no different from the reaction of its kind in the school's medical department this morning. Luo Nan also assumed a defensive posture, preparing to give it a painful head-on attack. However, this burning wraith didn't actually pounce over. On the contrary, it even retreated a bit to increase the distance between it and Luo Nan. Its blurry face slightly tilted upwards and it let out a shriek that was hard for ordinary people to hear, but it surged on the mental plane. Luo Nan's heart jumped. He practically instantly thought of the fearful roar from yesterday on the warship. He didn't have time to think too much. The heavily chained crow hummed as it broke through the air, striking directly at the burning wraith. But the enormous wave of the mental attack came even faster. When the heavily chained crow touched the burning wraith, Chen Xiaolin behind him had already let out a shriek. Her emotions of fear burst forth, and her entire body crashed into the inner wall of the elevator. She wanted to find a way to escape, but she simply didn't have any opportunity to do so. Her entire body stiffened, and her eyes slightly bulged out from fear. A dark red bloody light soared from her body, shooting straight at the burning wraith. She instantly became dispirited and fainted as the bloody light broke out from her body. Luo Nan was truly unable to obstruct this sort of incorporeal method. He himself needed to rely on the suppression of the heavily chained crow in order to stabilize his mind and his surging blood and energy. and the chains that traversed through the air seemed to have been affected by the main body. They lost their previously all-conquering strength and stopped outside the burning wraith, trembling. At that moment, the effect of fear roar was far from over. In the elevator, the black-suited male, who was obviously under the control of the burning wraith, let out a short roar and once again pounced towards Shuelei. Shuelei was obviously affected by Qin Xiaolan's scream. His body trembled, causing him to lose the initiative. However, he did not show any signs of weakness. He mustered all his remaining strength, and with a low roar, he pushed forward. Both sides once again clashed head-on, and this time, Shuelei only took half a step back. He took a punch, and at the same time, he returned an elbow. For the time being, he did not seem to be at a disadvantage. But Luo Nan wasn't happy. This was because he could already see that the intense combat and the surging emotions were the best catalysts. It caused the blood and energy of the two to transform into a long line of bloody light, endlessly pouring into the burning wraith in the air. Such a method of drawing blood and sucking marrow was more than 10 times more tyrannical than the spore environment of the simmering over a small fire from before. The burning wraith's ability to interfere with reality had already exceeded his imagination. Luo Nan suspected that if he continued to suck like this incorporeal wraith, which only existed on the mental plane, would be able to completely materialize from incorporeal and appear on the material plane. And what made him most vigilant was the opponent's calm attitude. The burning wraith had actually controlled its devouring instincts. It did not directly pounce forward, but instead increased its own strength to the greatest limit to increase its chances of victory. This could already be called an intelligent judgment. Sure enough, the name given by Quantum Corporation, human-faced arachnid, was the most appropriate name for this monster that was endlessly approaching a complete body. This was a savage and cunning hunter. It used every method to weaken its prey and strengthen itself. It was really hard to imagine just what kind of power its complete body would have. Luo Nan knew that the situation was becoming more and more unfavorable. With the support of Shuelei and the black-suited male, the power that the human-faced arachnid was able to grasp was rising with the tide. Luo Nan's heavily chained crow continued to attempt to penetrate through the incorporeal body of the arachnid. The wraith sign at the front was also doing its utmost to devour all the energy it could reach. But there was always a faint layer between them. After a few penetrations and disturbances, the core of the human-faced arachnid remained majestically motionless. Moreover, it continued to strengthen endlessly. Right now, the human-faced arachnid's main focus was still on strengthening its body. Once this strengthening came to an end, Luo Nan really didn't know what kind of terrifying attack would come next. As for Luo Nan himself, it seemed that he had reached his limit. These sorts of chaotic thoughts merely flashed before they were completely dispelled. Actually, there was still one more move. Luo Nan no longer looked at the human-faced arachnid. Instead, he closed his eyes and forced himself to enter the fixed space. Thanks to these past 2 days of difficult tempering, Luo Nan's mental state had made considerable progress. The visualization diagram of the tetrahedron, the inscribed sphere, and the outer scribed sphere appeared in the void in the blink of an eye. The heavily chained crow pulled out from the central region of the human-faced arachnid. It extended outward segment by segment in an attempt to penetrate deeper into the human-faced arachnid. But no matter what, it was separated by a layer. It was far from reaching the destructive might it had when it first subdued the burning wraith. Before, Luo Nan believed that it was because the human-faced arachnid was excessively powerful. But now he had other thoughts. Perhaps, the problem lay with him. What state was he in when the heavily chained crow displayed its greatest power? There was only one answer, the out-of-body state. The feeling of being transparent and clear, which disregarded all material objects, had disappeared ever since he returned to the out-of-body state. Luo Nan didn't understand the reasoning behind it, but the threat was right in front of him. He didn't have the time to ponder over it. Even if he treated a dead horse as a living one, he still had to go. The out-of-body state was an unfamiliar experience for Luo Nan. At first, he was struck by the siege hammer of the burning wraith. Then he was pulled by the heavily chained crow, forcing him into an out-of-body state. Now he had to take the initiative and continue his train of thought from back then. He transmitted the relevant thoughts through the heavily chained crow to the wraith sign. A marvelous vibration was transmitted back, instantly washing over his entire body. This time, Luo Nan's senses were even clearer. He clearly touched upon an incorporeal membrane. Originally, he didn't have the strength to break it, but under the pull of an external force, the internal and external attacks intersected. A hole instantly split open in this membrane. He immediately lost his bindings and floated up. Luo Nan's eyes were still closed, but his senses on the mental plane were completely opened. And at this moment, he met the peerlessly bizarre gaze of the human-faced arachnid. In the state of a soul body. The rattling sound of the heavily chained crow's trembling seemed to be even more fine and clear. It was precisely this subtle change that made Luo Nan instantly understand that his judgment was correct. The previous barrier wasn't because of any other reason. The most important reason just happened to come from his fleshly body. He definitely had to carefully study this problem later. In front of him, the human-faced arachnid's 6 eyes flickered. It was a bit eager to make a move. Perhaps it felt that it had accumulated enough superiority. Or perhaps Luo Nan in the out-of-body state looked more delicious and easier to bully. Luo Nan abandoned his final stray thoughts and looked straight at the human-faced arachnid without fear. Let's try again. The battle was on the verge of breaking out, but in this instant, the elevator's safety skylight collapsed with a rumble. A human figure flew down and smashed right into the head of the black-suited male, who had just crossed the middle of the elevator. Chapter 68. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuan.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. By right, the black-suited man's reaction was considered fast. Even when he was fighting with Shuelei, he still managed to twist his body to dodge. The problem was that the elevator compartment was only so big. Shuelei had to use a small portion of the compartment in order to protect Luo Nan and Chen Xiaolin, who were behind him. The space left for the black clothes was very little. In the end, he still had to use his arms to block. With a bang, the metal plate smashed onto the shoulder of the black suit. The predicted huge force had completely disappeared. The light metal plate was directly deformed. He had exerted force at the last moment and had even used the wrong amount of force. No matter how fierce the black suit was, he could not help but fall into a state of paralysis. Seeing the opportunity, Shuelei threw a punch without caring about anything else. However, his vision blurred again. He seemed to see a figure behind the black-suited man. Then, there was the crisp sound of bones breaking. The black-suited man twisted his body and came crashing over. This time, Shuelei had misjudged the distance. He instinctively turned his fist into a palm, wanting to push the black-suited man away. However, he had suddenly cut in between him and the black-suited man by lowering his body. It just so happened that Shuelei's arm was pushed outwards, leaving him wide open. His opponent's palm went up and struck his chin, sending a tremor into his brain. Shuelei's body stiffened. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to control his body. Just as he was struggling, the side of his neck was struck by another chop. This time he could not hold on any longer, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. In the blink of an eye, both sides in the life and death combat had fallen. They had both lost consciousness, and the blood and chi channels that were channeled to the human-faced arachnid had been severed. Although it was crude, it was a good method to take drastic measures. Luo Nan's mind shook. He immediately knew that reinforcements had arrived. The human-faced arachnid was endlessly enraged. Its 6 monstrous eyes suddenly lit up as it peered at the newcomer. The ripples on the mental plane condensed to the point of materialization and came crashing down. It was none other than the siege hammer. Luo Nan cried out in his mind. He tried to use the heavily chained crow to interfere with the human-faced arachnid, but the chained crow did indeed display a state that was vastly different from when it was in the out-of-body state. The chained crow pierced deeper, seeming to be about to touch the core of the human-faced arachnid. However, it was hard for the chained crow to display its immediate effects. It was at this moment that the red light in the elevator box exploded. Luo Nan had the urge to squint his eyes. This was the reaction of a soul body. Because right in front of them, the newly arrived reinforcements seemed to be bursting with a layer of raging flames. The blazing flames illuminated the interior and exterior. The siege hammer aimed directly at the soul level extinguished more than half of the raging flames, but in the end, it still didn't completely break through. On the contrary, the flames rose again after a slight setback, even exploding with an even more violent momentum than before, completely annihilating the impact on the mental level. Then, the flames filled the entire elevator, and the momentum was unparalleled. Format of fire. Luo Nan's mind couldn't help but be shaken, but he soon discovered that something was wrong. His soul body was swept by the light of the flames, and the pain he felt yesterday when he left his body reappeared. It was as if he was being cut by a knife. However, the coldness that froze his soul completely transformed into a scorching heat. So it didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Luo Nan saw that the situation was far from good. All thoughts of fighting a great battle after leaving his body were wiped away. Though he did not directly return to his body, he took a step back and hid behind his main body. He relied on the aura of his main body to block this wave of unexpected disaster. At the same time, a light whistle rang out from the elevator. The ice-cold blade light streaked across the sky, forming a clear contrast with the raging flames within the elevator. Yet it also miraculously blended together. The raging flames controlled the cold blade, and the glaring trajectory branded itself onto Luo Nan's mental plane. It didn't disperse for a long time. Love goes small say Netka. This blade looked very familiar. The human-faced arachnid was already in discomfort from being burned by the format of fire, and it was even more wary when facing the blade light. It instinctively wanted to dodge. But at this time, the heavily chained crow finally displayed its use after a period of adaptation. The chains suddenly snapped straight, and the chained body that was already pointing straight at the core of the human-faced arachnid radiated a myriad of fine threads. Though it lacked a bit of irresistible momentum, no matter what the human-faced arachnid wanted to do right now, it was able to carry out some interference and suppression. It was enough for the human-faced arachnid to slow down by a bit. The blade light tore through the air and instantly tore a wound through the body of the human-faced arachnid's phantom. Everything it passed through turned into nothingness. The human-faced arachnid hissed once more, but this time it was a miserable shriek. Before the shriek had even finished, the demonic body that was about to condense into substance actually exploded with a rumble. It transformed into countless dim rays of light that penetrated through the elevator box and dispersed in all directions. There was still this move. Luo Nan was greatly surprised. He could feel that the human-faced arachnid hadn't received any fatal injuries. The only reason it had disintegrated was for the sake of fleeing for its life. Who would believe this sort of judgment without a certain amount of intelligence? The heavily chained crow withdrew. With the wraith sign at the front, he felt that the human-faced arachnid had instantly disintegrated into chaos. He felt that the wraith sign had torn off a piece and devoured it in an instant. Luo Nan didn't carefully experience it, but he didn't want to delay any longer. His soul body threw itself into his body, returning to his body, and he opened his eyes. From his angle, he just happened to see the swift and fierce blade light return. In the end, it seemed to shrink back into the sleeve. Only the heavens knew that with such a close-fitting cut, there was no space to hide the blade's edge. Luo Nan couldn't help but size up the figure in detail. This figure looked a bit familiar. Luo Nan opened his mouth to speak, but a wave of dizziness suddenly assaulted him. His body leaned back, pressing against the inner wall of the elevator. The ice-cold metal surface was soon heated up by his body temperature. Sure enough, the out-of-body technique was a very dangerous move. The consumption was enormous. The soul body had to bear a portion of the attack, and the fleshly body had to bear the brunt of it in the end. Speaking of which, he hadn't even eaten dinner today. He was already very hungry. But right now, this feeling of being very, 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 very full. What was going on? Luo Nan slowly inhaled and exhaled in an attempt to alleviate the endlessly increasing feeling of bloating. But it was useless. The feeling of being stuffed came from the mental plane. It was like the wraith sign had taken a bite and forgot to measure how big its stomach was. It had been stuffed by the human-faced arachnid's gift. The piece torn from the body of the human-faced arachnid didn't just contain pure energy. It also contained an enormous amount of information. The heavily chained crow possessed a certain analytical ability, but it wasn't able to operate properly when faced with such an enormous amount of chaotic information. Clearly, this information exceeded the limits of Luo Nan's understanding. What to do? Oh, perhaps it's possible. Luo Nan's mind stirred, and the external neuron buried within the flexible e-ink screen reacted. It connected with the heavily chained crow in an instant. It was as if a floodgate had been opened. Luo Nan didn't care if this enormous amount of information was useful or not. He stuffed it all in. His thoughts were very simple. Both input and reverse output were input. The external neuron was able to control multiple system modules in the laboratory at the same time. It could suppress the enormous amount of information within the supercomputer. It shouldn't be a problem to deal with the excess information on the body of the human-faced arachnid. Reality proved that his judgment was correct. The external neuron really did consume as much information as it could, without any adverse reactions. The resolution of his mental senses was limited. Luo Nan didn't know how the external neuron operated in the end. He wanted to open the flexible screen and take a look. A hand reached out in front of him at this time. Chapter 69. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. The hand that was extended in front of him was slender and spotlessly white. The cold and hard contours of the joints revealed a different meaning. Luo Nan raised his head and a familiar face entered his eyes. It looked excessively cold and indifferent. It was hard to deal with. There was also the suit and trousers. There was a considerable contradiction with the memories of a dozen seconds ago where the blade light had crisscrossed. You are, He Yuan, your temporary secretary. I'm very sorry, Mr. Luo. I came late. Right, her surname was also He. Luo Nan finally confirmed. Wasn't this the white-collared woman he met in the hotel lobby before? She was the one who made Chen Wei-kan of the Mutual Assistance Society call her sister He. He had even been this person's doorman. But today, this sister He had become his secretary. There seemed to be quite a large difference between the rules of the world of normal people and the world of ability users. It seemed to be more advantageous to him. He Yuan's eyes drooped slightly at this time. Her temperament was a bit different from the cold and proud face in his memories. Only now did Luo Nan realize that this person's gaze was far too fierce. When she intentionally or unintentionally concealed this characteristic, the impression she left behind was a thin and quiet person. Of course, she was also extremely beautiful. It really was good to have a secretary like this. A tiny sprout of vanity sprouted in his mind, but it was immediately uprooted. Luo Nan didn't forget Zhang Yingying's introduction of the situation. This was probably the special period of the human-faced arachnid's rampage. This was the embodiment of the value of psychics. If he really took this for granted, he would probably be sent to the Wilderness Explorer Society's joke wall. He would be forever remembered. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. He Yuan's hand was still placed in front of him. Luo Nan's mind spun a bit before he reacted. He reached out and clasped her hand. When he truly touched her hand, he felt that Yuan's hand was indeed as cold and hard as it appeared. Many of her fingertips and joints were covered in calluses. In comparison, Luo Nan's own palm was like that of a young master who had never experienced the baptism of wind and frost. It was a bit too soft. Yuan exerted a bit of force and brought the half-leaning, half-falling Luo Nan up. She pulled her hand out, but she still supported him. It was as if she was afraid that Luo Nan would fall again. Actually, Luo Nan really wanted to tell her that he was just a bit hungry and a bit full. His body was fine. But when he thought about it again, he felt that this statement was no different from a lunatic. He changed the direction of his words and pointed at the unconscious Shuelei. Is he okay? This is my friend. He saved me just now. Luo Nan was really worried that Yuan would treat Shuelei as an enemy and dispose of him. She's just temporarily unconscious. She'll wake up when her qi and blood rush through the bottleneck. But the other lady is a bit more troublesome. She may need to be hospitalized for observation, and a psychiatrist will be arranged. Wait a moment. As Yuan finished speaking, she lightly pressed her ear. She should be communicating with someone through the hex ear. Luo Nan didn't feel that he was being left out. He took this opportunity to continue sizing up and evaluating his secretary. Yuan's eyebrows were locked by habit when she conversed with others. It should be said that Luo Nan had never seen her truly smile and relax. It was as if she was dissatisfied with everything, including herself. Perhaps it was because of this, coupled with her illustrious background, that she always gave people a great sense of oppression. Luo Nan wasn't a stranger to this feeling. He was normally like this as well. The experiment of restoring his grandfather's notebook had already consumed nearly all of his energy. The abstruse theories and extremely high operating standards made him constantly doubt whether or not everything he did was perfect. Whether or not he met the requirements, the pressure was always there. Naturally, it was hard for him to be happy. It was just that Luo Nan didn't have an illustrious background, so he couldn't form external oppression and the like. He could only appear more introverted and gloomy. Such a powerful woman lived under pressure all the time. This world was much more difficult than he imagined. Luo Nan shook his head as he inexplicably felt a bit emotional. He didn't know why he suddenly felt a bit melancholic. A second later, he discovered that the ground beneath his feet seemed to still be shaking. The elevator had already returned to its calm state, so the shaking could only come from the outside. He subconsciously asked, "Another earthquake?" "No. It's just a pointless venting after a failed operation." Yuan actually responded. She then pressed the elevator's floor button and selected the 81st floor. The elevator trembled slightly before returning to normal. It slowly started to ascend. Luo Nan reminded, "Zhang Yingying is still on the 27th floor, she's already been called up." Luo Nan blinked his eyes. He was already unable to make sense of the society's arrangements and corresponding logic. Zhang Yingying, that unreliable woman, had said a few words that were filled with misleading information. And no matter how he looked at it, Yuan was much more serious than Zhang Yingying. "Can you tell me what's going on right now? I remember that I only came here to participate in the entrance assessment." Yuan raised her head to look at him. "Assessment?" Luo Nan felt no pressure selling Zhang Yingying. "I just submitted my application to join the society this morning." Then Zhang Yingying notified me to come here to participate in the assessment, and I've already passed. Then you guys told me that the Darksider life form called the human-faced arachnid is wreaking havoc right now. The society really needs psychics. They even gave me a secretary. There's nothing wrong with the above, right? He Yuan frowned in response. You only learned about the human-faced arachnid when you arrived at the hotel? What's the specific content of the operation? Content. Luo Nan was stupefied. Then he discovered that he seemed to have sold out Zhang Yingying in an instant, sold out well. Luo Nan had a whole new understanding of Zhang Yingying's degree of unreliability in an instant. He Yuan shook her head. Even if I told you the content, it would be meaningless. It's a complete mess. Was she talking about the society? Right when Luo Nan was bewildered, He Yuan sent him a message through the hex ear. Please enter the encrypted channel. Adjust to war chess mode. Luo Nan moved according to her words and the translucent interface of his visual membrane opened up once more. At this time, he discovered that 7 or 8 blood-red warnings had appeared in the encrypted wartime communication channel. They all came from He Yuan, and the time was right before and after the incident. And Zhang Yingying had also sent out several messages over the normal communication channel. However, Luo Nan had been completely engrossed in the human-faced arachnid at the time. He actually didn't notice it at all. He Yuan gave him a reminder at this time. Mr. Luo should pay attention to the Hexier's information as much as possible. Our future communications should be conducted through it to ensure accuracy and efficiency. Okay. But I think I got disconnected just now. He Yuan's eyebrows tightened a bit. It was my negligence. Mr. Luo may be able to realize the third level of communication, but in the end, you aren't awakened. Once you enter a tense situation, it will be very hard to balance everything. I hope that Mr. Luo can take a certain amount of time to do emergency training to avoid a situation where your communications are disconnected. We can start tomorrow and plan out the time to proceed. Luo Nan didn't respond immediately because the structural diagram of the Limestone Water Village pub had already appeared on his retina. There was an eye-catching moving logo on it. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.